right, welcome to the conversation on TYT Network, where you know what we have? Fun conversations, certainly interesting ones. Michael Patrick Orishchin is back. We talked to him a little bit ago, and he is a Republican. He ran for Congress in the 53rd District of California. So Michael, good to have you back.
Thanks for having me again.
No problem. So, Michael, I'm super curious what you think these days after we've gone through the mayhem of the interregnum, the lame duck session of Donald Trump, which was not so lame, although it did involve people ducking. So, we poll out today saying that 85% of Trump voters would stick with him if he was in a general election. 76% would pick him over any candidate in the Republican primaries if he were to run in 2024. So I'm curious, after all that you've seen, where are you on this? Are you still with Trump?
I'm totally with Trump. Yep. Yeah, I believe those poll numbers. I mean, I would even have expected them to be maybe even north of that. I think we got a lot of hubris in the Republican Party that thinks that they own the voters. But while the GOP and institutional Republicanism may seem fractured, I really think it's Trump that owns the party.
So that seems clear in the numbers. So I'm curious how you're going to handle it, because 54% say that they would be loyal to Trump. Only 34% say they would be loyal to the Republican Party. So now remember, this is the overwhelming majority of Republican voters. So if Trump was to start a Patriot Party, for example, and you were going to run for Congress again, would you run in the Republican Party or in the Patriot Party?
It's simply not going to happen. I mean, you see the kind of progressive agenda made its way into the Democratic Party. You're going to see the same thing. I mean, I think you're going to see a big amount of, we'll call it repatriotism within the Republican Party. I don't think it makes sense. Nobody can really make muster with a third party. I think a new party would be not only ill-advised, but it would have a real challenge at this point.
Okay, so what I'm going to skip.
Do you agree? I want to know what you think about that. You think a Patriot Party is a real possibility?
Yeah. So look, here's the deal, and it's a complicated question. And the reason why I was going to go on to other topics is because it really depends on what happens next. So if it had turned out that the Trump supporters were a minority of the Republican Party, but God, they're like around 40% or so. Well, then I could see Trump starting a Patriot Party, because Trump's of course obsessed with himself. He doesn't care about you, Michael, or any of his voters, or anyone but a guy named Donald J. Trump. So would he have destroyed the Republican Party just for his own ego? In a second, he would have done it in 1 second flat. And if you start a third party with only 40% of the support of the Republicans, yes, you will destroy the Republican Party, and the Democrats will win every election going forward. That's why I've been against a third party in the Democratic side. That's why I started Justice Democrats to be within the Democratic Party, because a third party is ill-advised.
But we're going to have the same exact mechanism.
What's that?
We're going to have the same exact mechanism within the Republican Party, and a lot of it. I mean, the Republicans that were maybe initially never Trumpers, and then went along, wanted to ride his coattails through various elections. I think you're now seeing their true colors come out, right? Mitch McConnell, Liz Cheney, Bill Cassidy, everybody who wants to throw Trump under the bus, I think they're going to get primaried. They're just not going to find themselves with a lot of support.
Yeah, I think that Civil War was super quick, and Trump won it instantly. And I think Mitch McConnell's in a world of trouble and doesn't realize it. And the knuckleheads on TV don't see it coming at all. No, they just cannot read a goddamn poll, and they don't know any actual Republicans, or they only know the elitist Republicans. So,
or out here in California, Kevin McCarthy. I mean, what is he thinking?
Yeah. So to me, that's clear. Like today, we covered on the Young Turks, Michael Steele laughing and going, "He can start any party he likes. The Republican Party is going to stay strong." No, you don't get it, brother. It's already over. So finally, on this issue, because I want to come back to what you believe, Michael. I just, to answer your question, I don't think that Trump needs to start a new party because he already has the Republican Party.
He's got the party.
Yeah. So that's clear to anyone paying attention. So obviously no one in DC realizes that, but everybody else does. So now, given that, Michael, I get it. You want to stay with the voters. I'm going to tell you that you can't win in 53rd district if you run again. You can't win anywhere if you don't support Trump in the Republican Party. I understand that. You could say that's not why. Okay, whatever. Okay, but then tell me why you are staying with Trump. So let's say, assume I'm wrong and you're not doing it for political expediency. You really believe
exactly. It's not a function of political expediency. Look, I thought the crossover ideas that he had on populism, American sovereignty. I think his message resonated. Obviously, I didn't start. I think we talked about this last time. I was a Ben Carson guy. I was a Rubio guy, and Trump won me over. And I was tentative at first, but I think his policies showed efficacy, and I think there's little room to kind of dispute, the good effects he's had. So I'm not doing it from a standpoint of, hey, I'm loyal to Trump. He's just, he's had the right kind of political instincts. And I think he knew. I mean, I think the great irony is that, a guy who once owned, World Wrestling Foundation, knows that there's a picked loser. And in some cases, what you see between the Democrat and Republican establishments it's exactly that. It's like, the puppeteers can kind of controlling both sides, and you're sitting here watching real people go, no, that's not me. I'm not the establishment. And so in that way, it's quite ironic that he recognized that Republicans in many ways were setting themselves up to lose happily.
So Michael, you said a couple of things in there we really got to dive into. So first of all, you said he won you over, and you mentioned one of the reasons was his efficacy. You get that for the rest of us, the polling seems to indicate 55 to 60% of the country, but not necessarily 55 to 60% of the voting electorate, thinks that sounds crazy. Like what we saw from Trump in the 4 years was monstrous. And efficacy, he didn't do anything. Although, like literally, the only thing he accomplished was a $1.9 trillion tax cut for the rich. So help us understand why
we talked about that last time. You can't make that case when you saw the number of people go off welfare. I mean, it's simply, I know, and I don't want to rehash our September conversation, but you have to align with the fact that the number of people who came off of the SNAP program and food stamps was meteoric. I mean, opportunity zones, First Step Act, the transparency in terms of medical pricing, which Biden has now repealed. The price of insulin shooting up. We had so many things that were really bipartisan that we didn't see. That I think we have to credit to Trump. I mean, even things that Obama started, what is it? The Apprenticeship USA program that Trump built on, which was a great, an opportunity for people to go, right into the trades. Biden bent over to the union push to cancel that program, but it had tremendous bipartisan support. So, I mean, you gotta fear when people hate, when you're voting against somebody or something, they're really throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's tons of things that I think people will come to find remorse in voting for Biden on.
I'm only going to touch on it because you're right. We largely had this conversation. I want to move on to other stuff. Right, I'll just say, look, for the sake of the audience, Obama hands this guy a massive economy, and stock market's booming, every metric is booming. It's an absolute stone cold fact. And then he destroys it by not responding to COVID properly. And Michael, every stat you're quoting is pre-COVID. You say, well, COVID's not fair. No, Alito responds well to a disaster and an emergency, and he bungled it in every imaginable way, including our lives. 500,000 dead now because that moron couldn't figure out how to manage his way out of a paper bag.
What is materially different about? I mean, the big joke for me was ostensibly Trump can't handle this pandemic, and Biden's got all the right answers. And then what does Biden do? He turns around and hires the same guy that Trump's got running the show, Fauci. And I don't find any material difference in terms of what this approach to COVID, Biden is showing, other than national mask mandates, not popular. Basically throwing the whole notion of warp speed under the bus, saying that, well, now we finally have a vaccine. I find it incredibly suspect that the day after the inauguration, the WHO comes out and says, well, you know what, our cycle thresholds for this whole COVID test, this PCR test, are way too high, which we all been saying for a year and getting banned on Facebook for saying. And all of a sudden it says, okay, that's, you're going to see a lot fewer false positives. So I'm asking you, what is something that Biden is doing materially different in facing down COVID?
Yeah, in this case, the culture matters a ton. So he is encouraging people to listen to science. So yes, that includes wearing masks. And Trump said, and Michael, you can't, look, I know, I don't know if you mean it or you don't mean it, but I'm going to assume that you do mean it. I'm going to assume that you do mean it. Okay.
Please.
And so Trump said that COVID was going to go away a couple of months before the election. And then the exact opposite happened. It peaked in October, November, December, and January. It crushed us. It quadrupled. He was dead wrong. He was dangerously wrong. And it led to a spike of the cases. And he told people that masks are no big deal. He flouted his ignorance, whether it was the bleach or he comes out of the hospital and goes, I think I'm immune. I don't know, maybe I am. Why do you not know? Why do you not know as president? And so he never listened.
How can you explain?
He never listened to the doctors, and he encouraged others not to listen to them. He had them listening to the demon sperm doctor. Okay, no, telling people to listen to doctors and put on masks indoors in appropriate places does make a giant difference. Now, that's not the only reason why the COVID cases are going down, but they're down 76% in the last 6 weeks. Those are facts.
That's because of the PCR tests. Look, the guy who invented the polymerase chain reaction, Kary Mullis, won a Nobel Prize for it, hated Fauci, thought Fauci was a total fraud. Suspiciously, the guy dies August 2019, 62 years old of a heart attack. I think the PCR test was never designed for anything other than amplifying DNA from crime scenes. Come on,
Michael, 100%. Hold on. Are you saying that guy was killed on purpose? No, by who?
I'm not saying that. I just think it's a strange time for a guy in otherwise good health. So my point is this:
so who would have killed him?
PCR test is not designed. The PCR
Michael, who
test
would have killed him in your theory?
I'm not suggesting that he was killed. I'm saying it's strange. I'm saying it was suspicious. It's worthy of looking into. The bottom line, PCR is wrongly used. PCR is wrongly used, right? We amplify RNA and DNA with PCR testing. So explain to me why the day after the inauguration, the WHO comes out and says, look, we were way wrong with this 40 count cycle threshold. I mean, come on.
Michael, so first of all, throughout this epidemic, you asked me a question, I'll tell you, okay? Throughout this epidemic, since it's literally a novel coronavirus, they changed a couple of things as they were going. So in the middle of the Trump administration, they said, okay, in the beginning, they were like, hey, we're not sure you should wear masks. Then they turned around and said, you should wear masks. Part of the reason was, yes, they wanted to preserve it for doctors and nurses. And by the way, that makes sense. But the other reason was because they weren't positive about the science because it's novel, it's a new coronavirus. And we learned many different things. There was a study that came out of Israel just about 10 days ago or so that said, hey, the people thought even after you get the vaccine, you might be able to transmit it. But the new studies that we're seeing, because now there's a lot more people vaccinated, are showing that it's harder to transmit. So yes, science is not something where it's set in stone, especially when it's something novel like this. And the point of science is to experiment and learn and learn and learn. But if you reject the scientific method, you're left with randomness, chaos, and madness. So in that particular case about WHO, I don't know why the scientists made that decision and when they made that. But if you're implying that the World Health Organization is coordinating with Democrats and changing science based on that, that would require a conspiracy among all of the world's scientists, which is never going to happen and sounds cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Okay, well, look, you saw the number of people who are canceled of their medical certifications by the AMA for simply saying, hey, this is strange. We're looking at this. I mean, we're all scientists. Like you said, science is something where we bring the data to the table and we say, let's make some sense of this. How do you explain the flu being gone? The flu is, something that, taking 300, 400,000 deaths a year, and now it's attributable to an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude smaller than that. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's not like we eradicated. It makes
perfect sense. I'll say this, and then let's move on to another topic. So you asked a question: why is there a lot less flu now? Because people are inside. You also get the flu from interacting with other people. So when you have masks on and you're in semi-quarantine, a lot less people are going to get the flu.
Yeah, well, then how do you explain the 500 deaths and the millions of cases of COVID?
Because
you can't have it both ways. You can't use the same argument. They got the same argument both ways.
Churches, no, Michael, it's very simple. So coronavirus is super contagious. So when half the population, or a little bit more than that, about 60% of the population listens to the scientists and wears the mask and does self-quarantine. 40% of the population goes, Trump told me it's no big deal, what's a big deal, right? And so what happens is, well, 60% of the population then is not getting the flu because they're all inside or they're wearing masks. But 40% are taking this wildly contagious disease of coronavirus and smearing it all over themselves and each other. They're going to church and they're singing and they're having a good time. They're going to restaurants, they're drinking beers, they're going to parties, and yeah, of course, we got skyrocketing coronavirus. Michael, what is the alternate theory? Are you saying that it's like all part of a government plan? Who invented corona? Was it Americans? Was it the Chinese? Because to me, all that sounds crazy. So you tell me, what's actually going on in truth theory?
Look, I'm going to be quick because I don't want to talk about coronavirus too much more. But 2015, we know the NIH. We know we moved this contiguous virus, this virus to the Wuhan lab, right? It had gain of function. It has so much contiguous DNA in it that matches HIV strain. It's impossible to be found in nature. And we were getting banned from Facebook and Twitter for saying these things a year ago. Yeah, and then CNN comes out last month and confirms exactly that. Yeah. So, it's like there can't be a temporal distribution on truth, right? It was a complete fake news a year ago. And now, okay, we can concede that yes, this novel coronavirus could have been lab born. Right, okay, and that's something that mainstream media outlets are now saying.
Yeah, no, Michael, I've never seen that. It's not true. But I encourage everyone watching: do not get stuck in your own social media bubble, whether you're on the left or you're on the right. Go and just please read something that you don't normally read on Facebook. Okay, go try to find actual articles, and not from like JimJablowski.com or Epoch Times, which is pure propaganda and total trash. Okay, just find an actual article that gives you the truth, or 8 articles, 12 articles. Don't just trust me or Michael. All right, let's move on. So all right. Okay, so I'm curious where your mind's at. 73% of Trump supporters say Biden didn't really win the election.
That's absolutely right. Have you read the Navarro report? Look, that's what's so frustrating, right? We won the hearts and minds. Trump's policies were effective, even though he was being, we were all being browbeaten that he's a crazy racist white nationalist. He triples his support among Latino voters. He gets 50% more of the black vote. People are not buying the identity blustering. Okay, so we did win the hearts and minds, and then here we have these states that have victory margins for Biden, which are on par with what you would expect for a close city council election, and then you have ballots in question numbering in the 500,000, and so of course
none
we feel
of that
like
is
it
true.
was stolen. Yeah, 100%.
No, Michael, you're talking crazy talk. Michael, obviously you disagree, but look, I want the audience to know one other thing. One, I appreciate Michael coming on because it's not just Michael. He's representing a ton of voters. A ton of voters agree with Michael, okay? So do your own research. Do not go into your own social media bubbles and say, hey, Jim Jablowski and all the other lunatic right-wingers said this, or all the other left-wingers said this. Try to find objective reality. Read the court decisions for yourself. That's a perfect example. You could actually look up what they said, the actual quotes of the justices, and the judges, including Trump appointees, and then you'll see the reality. But Michael,
better than that, use the Wayback Machine and go to every Secretary of State website and actually look at the deltas. You'll see some very interesting things. That's how I did it. Go primary source.
Alpha, beta, omega, delta, I'm for all of it. Okay, as long as you're getting actual facts, okay? All right, Michael Patrick Oristion, thank you for representing your side. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Cenk.
All right. Do you know what we do online these days? Everything. You know that. You're watching the show online. You do your banking, credit cards, passwords, all online. So do you need to be safe? Of course, it's not an option. PureVPN helps protect you online, and they actually do it for up to 10 devices, which is great. And they've got deals right now. That's why I like this sponsor. I want you to go check it out, tyt.com/purevpn. Make sure you protect yourself online. It's really important. tyt.com/purevpn.
My name is Cassandra Hanks. I've been with TYT for 3 years. I am a video editor and a photographer. The main perk for working for TYT is, as being their main photographer, I get to photograph and sometimes meet some of the celebrities that come through. Susan Sarandon was amazing because she brought her dog Penny. Tom Morello is probably my favorite because I love rock music. Meeting people like Joss Whedon and Quentin Tarantino as being some of the reasons why I got into filmmaking and photography was like a dream come true.
All right, well, the Young Turks special election day coverage dropping.
An amazing power panel.
Look at this panel. You want to talk about power?
It's like a smart Destiny's Child.
We're all too strong.
We start a revolution. Yes, another one.
Aren't you excited? Wow. And then best writers in the country are right here on this panel with the obvious exception of John Idaho.
Why is he lying? Because these are acts that you can commit with impunity.
Most of us are usually in boxer shorts underneath.
I went with the pants today.
This is the first ever power panel with Donald Trump as president.
We have elected the top Twitter troll in the country.
We have to stop pretending that race is not an issue in this country.
Now keep in mind, racism had gone away until Barack Obama brought it back.
That's right.
They want to protect life so much that they want to ensure that insurance companies don't cover your maternity care.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring him. There's nobody there to say, you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're going to get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
Welcome everyone to the Young Turks. I'm John Ederola and joined today by Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, how's it going?
I'm okay. It's been a day. I think I'll be all right. How are you? I'm glad to be with you for 2 hours.
Yes, I'm glad for you to be here, and I totally knew that we would be doing this together before today. No, I'm glad to be here. If I was gonna totally choose nothing. But anyway, yeah, no, look, we keep it real. That's, for better or worse, both actually. We do it for better and for worse. Yeah, some days in the news are just really rough, and you'd prefer to not have to exist. But if you're gonna have to exist, to have to like follow the news and talk about it, but we have to, and there's a lot of really important stuff in the news. And over the next hour, I'm gonna present some, and then we're gonna switch over, and you're gonna present a bunch. Anna Kasparian is off for the week, as deserved as time off can be. So really hope that she's not watching this right now. Really hope that she's whittling or working with wood or something, and has Charlie in her lap. That's all I hope.
Lots of whittling.
Exactly, and
she's gone to an Amish farm for the week. What's going on?
She works with wood. That's her thing. Anyway, as I said, we do have a lot of important stuff we're going to be talking about. We're of course going to be giving you some of the details about the terrible string of murders in Atlanta, updates on the Violence Against Women Act. Let's see, the filibuster, could it potentially change? We'll be debating that. And what can we expect in your hour, Francesca?
Oh, it's gonna be the governor's ball in the second hour. We're talking about Ron DeSantis on the rise, because I guess when you ignore a pandemic, that's what happens. We're gonna talk about the recall of Gavin Newsom, and Gavin talking about maybe pushing Senator Feinstein into an early retirement, although who can say it's really early? Anyway, it'll be a great second hour.
That is really stretching the definition early of early, but anyway, yes, so lots to get to, obviously. And with that, why don't we launch into the big news of the day? As everyone watching this, I'm sure, is well aware, last night there was a horrific string of shootings in and around Atlanta that left a number dead, especially apparently targeting women of Asian descent. There were shootings at 2 massage parlors in Atlanta, 1 in the suburbs. It left 8 people dead. 21-year-old man suspected in the shootings was taken into custody in Southwest Georgia hours later after a manhunt. So identified quickly, tracked down, and acquired quickly. And then pretty much everything after that, Francesca, when it comes to the police and this individual, I think we can all agree we would have preferred that it had been very different. Glad that they got him before he could kill more people. And apparently he had been planning to potentially travel to Florida and to commit more shootings that would have almost certainly left more people dead. But aside from that, pretty unfortunate. So we want to show you some footage that a lot of people have been talking about today. And it involves one of the representatives for the police talking about what they know about the shooter.
Did take responsibility for the shootings. He said that early on once we began the interviews with him. He claims that these, and as the chief said, this is still early, but he does claim that it was not racially motivated. He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction, and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places, and it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate. Like I said, it's still early on, but those were comments that he made.
Did he discuss any kind of religious motivation for this, or was he responsible?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
Or political?
Non-political. I've heard nothing about politics. They got that impression that yes, he understood the gravity of it, and he was pretty much fed up and kind of at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
Remorseful?
I'm not going to go to. I don't know if he was remorseful or not.
Francesca, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's an incredible exhibition of a police officer doing the PR work for a murderer. When do we get this kind of an insight into someone who just killed 8 people? At what point did anyone ask a police officer to say anything other than we're investigating whether this was racially motivated, whether it was politically motivated? We're investigating it. No, you don't just funnel the words of a mass murderer into the public sphere unquestioned. I mean, if anything, say nothing. So it's just shocking. It's just immediately shocking to hear that. And I guess I just want to say that for everyone, when something like this happens, you immediately think, probably because most of you watching are not mass murderers, which is wonderful. Great audience. I'm just kidding.
Don't kill us.
You immediately think, why would someone do this? I mean, I think that's any rational response is, why would someone do this? And I think that we all have to kind of take a step back and think about, like, there is no justification. Number one, there's never a justification for this kind of killing. So let's just get that out of the way. But you definitely don't expect a police officer or chief to come up and immediately make the talking points that the murderer, apprehended very peacefully, as most white suspects are, to do the PR work for him.
Yeah, and I know, oh God, there's so much there. I want to touch on the last point that you made, which a lot of people have pointed out. We always point this out, that when it's a white shooter, they always seem to capture them peacefully. And people who, especially are in media and the right wing, that whether they admit it or not, they do think of themselves as unpaid PR for these sorts of racist murderers. Will say, well, they surrender. They surrender. That's what's different, is that they surrender. Is that what's different? How many white shooters suit up with body armor and all that, clearly anticipating that they're going to be killed, and yet they still get brought in? I think it has something to do with the fact that the police in one situation versus another conceive of threat very differently. And that is the big thing. We know that the cops are trained that the most important tool that you need to check constantly is, how deathly afraid are you right now? And if you get to a certain amount of fear, begin shooting. That's basically how it works. And I think that there is something about these sorts of shooters that they believe is less inherently threatening to them. A little bit of the Ron Johnson, I felt like I was under no threat at the Capitol sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But anyway, obviously the more important point in particular here is what he did and why he did it. And we can't know for sure, and it is possible, although never, for sure, that over the next few days we'll get far more information about that. But I would say what the killer says the day of is largely irrelevant. And I don't think, and I know this is seemingly controversial. I don't think that whether a thing is racist is up to the racist. Is that controversial? Because the cop is acting as if it's really up to the person who did it as to whether it is an instance of racism or not.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And I think that, and I know we're gonna go into the numbers of anti-Asian hate crimes and that have occurred recently. But I would urge people to understand, especially understand how the Asian American community is feeling right now. That now for the first time, right, states are opening up, people are out and about more. One of the sort of ironic things we kept on talking about lockdown is that there's gonna be less mass shootings. Because that's the hell world that we live in this country. And lo and behold, it was right. Except now that, lockdown is ending, people have been fed so much anti-Asian racism vis-a-vis the pandemic. And now this is what's happening. They're being targeted. And so just put yourself in the shoes of families, in the shoes of workers who put themselves on the line, who are actually trying to open up, trying to run a business, who are trying to live their lives, and understand that you cannot see what happened last night in Atlanta and divorce it from the many, many, many instances of anti-Asian hate crimes. So whether or not what's in the heart of the shooter was that he was targeting Asian women is irrelevant right now. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, and just very briefly to touch on I would say what his criminal defense will at some point claim as the foundation for some sort of insanity defense. The whole thing, he's obsessed with porn or whatever, temptation, insert whatever BS thing he's gonna say, even though in this case it was the cops for some reason doing that defending for him. There's been a lot of conversation about that, and I wanna read this tweet from Millie Tran, who said, as if these things aren't related and based on centuries of sexualized and submissive stereotypes of Asian women, white supremacy is rooted in misogyny and racism. Yeah, they come up with something that seems like it's something else when it is just another part of that thing. And the lack of ability to see the connection seems like it's part of the problem, actually.
Yeah, and I just think that folks need to understand. Obviously, all immigrant communities have been invisibilized and are invisibilized in their particular ways. Obviously, one of the biggest communities that it's been hit by COVID is the Latino community, right? Working in like meat processing plants and such. But Asian Americans have been invisibilized for so long and have been used as scapegoats for so long in this country, right? Going back to the Chinese Exclusion Act, et cetera. And the ways that not just invisibilized, but also hypersexualized. And ironically, with these spas where these Asian women worked in, that is precisely the kind of work that is invisibilized work, sex work that we don't talk about, and also the ways in which we sort of allow ourselves to see folks who work in those industries as dispensable and as disposable, and how there's no way you can bring yourself to kill that many people, honestly, or anyone really, but unless you are willing to participate in a level of dehumanization that absolutely a culture of anti-Asian racism has created, that has been fomented and stoked by the pandemic and Donald Trump so recently out of office. But so again, this stuff, it's not one-to-one, but be smarter than that, guys. Like zoom out a little bit, understand, situate this, not just in the year, not just in the 4 years of Trump, but in the long history of racial animus in this country.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's such a weird dodge. I mean, as many people have pointed out, like, this is Atlanta. How many strip clubs did he drive past to get to these spas to then say it was just temptation I was fighting against? Like, it's such a bizarre argument. But anyway, as you alluded to, we do want to talk a little bit about the numbers. There's some interesting trends here in this tweet. Verbal harassment makes up 68% of hate incidents. Physical assault makes up 11%. Women are 2.3 times more likely to report hate incidents. And in particular, in terms of sort of xenophobic attacks against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, those numbers are basically what we see, the distribution between women and men. And 45% of reports originated in California, making it the first in the nation for hate incident reports. And not directly connected, but I on the pre-show for the Damage Report this morning, I was talking about how there's this new report on white supremacist propaganda incidents, like it being distributed at campuses or flyers and things like that. And in 2020, there was something like 5,400 incidents. In 2017, it was like 250. Like, it has simply exploded. But again, we're supposed to act as if that's not a problem. White supremacy probably has nothing to do with this.
Right. No, and then I think the other excuse that people are making, right, is because some of the perpetrators of anti-Asian violence have been black. That is seen as like, oh, see, well, yeah, so they're black. So anyway, white supremacy doesn't apply, bye. And that is two things. One is it's an excuse to not actually deal with this kind of hatred and racism. Number one, it's an excuse because it's the same thing with black on black crime. Oh, well, black on black crime. Oh yeah, okay, well then we don't have to talk about it anymore. People are still dying, but we won't talk about it, right? But then specifically, it's seeing that so narrowly and not again zooming out and understanding the ways that white supremacy, the ways that the roles that immigrants, the ways that African Americans have been put into, and the ways that they are either taught to behave, make yourself invisible, do work that no one else wants to do, and also the ways that then pits communities of color against one another. That is all part of a rubric of white supremacy. That's part of a rubric of a country that sees people of color as useful pawns, as model minorities when they need to be, as sexual objects when they need to be, as in this man's case, right? And then as victims when they have a bad day.
Yeah, and I don't even, we have this tweet from Matt Walsh. I'm not even interested in showing it. But anyway, but the argument you made is one that is definitely out there. And I will just say that it is, to add on, everything you said was exactly right. If your stance that you want us to believe is that America doesn't have a race problem, racism doesn't exist, these are things that supposedly serious people actually still say in 2021. If that's what you believe, that racism isn't a problem, white supremacy isn't a problem, it's weird that when a white guy kills Asian people, you yell, yeah, but black people kill people too. That's a weird, yeah, I think maybe we do have a racism problem. If that's not what we're talking about, why are you talking about that? Why are black people the excuse for literally everything that white people do if we don't have a race problem? But they do find this convincing, or at least distracting. Because after all, super fast. When something like this happens and yet another white guy shot up a bunch of people, we know exactly what the strategy is. For Fox News, for the Matt Walshes and all that, it's maybe briefly we'll pretend to care about the victims, although they generally don't even bother to do that. Let's keep our head down for a day or two, and then we can go back to demonizing whoever we want. And we will never learn from this. No conclusions will be drawn that'll be useful or helpful.
Right, and the problem is, I mean, like with the Florida nightclub shooting, right, where the perpetrator was Muslim and targeted the LGBTQ community. It's once again sort of seen as like, well, that's a problem over here, or oh well, this man is ISIS. That's great, that's a perfect tool for the right to use. But they don't care about the LGBTQ community, but they don't care about the Asian American community. And in fact, Asian American organizations and LGBTQ organizations have been leading calls for community-led solutions rather than more policing, which, as they very well know, comes down on people of color, specifically Black Americans. And so the solution is so much about solidarity. And so I would urge, news organizations, including us, right? But we have to make sure that we lift up some of the work that is being done in cities like Oakland or Los Angeles or New York, that actually is being led by the communities, which they say, no more policing. We don't want more cops on the streets. That's your solution. We know who gets hurt when that happens, right? Yeah. We know that feeds into the system of racist policing already. We need actual tools in the community. And those tools can also be housing, business loans, stopping gentrification. So yeah, anyway.
Oh, those are all wonderful points. Just briefly, let's touch on some of the anti-Asian xenophobia that's been kicked up for the past year. It didn't begin a year ago, obviously, but some of the most powerful people in the country decided that was going to be their hobby for the past year. Let's talk about Donald Trump, who seemingly the only thing that gets him worked up about COVID is its nation of origin. So we want to show you a clip, and I want to be very clear in this clip. This is not Donald Trump from a year ago or 6 months ago or 2 weeks ago. This is Donald Trump from last night.
As I call it, the China virus, COVID.
It's fun. He's got a little nickname. He's got a bunch of nicknames. Sometimes at rallies, he'll go through a whole bunch of them. So look, we can't say for sure to what extent the national conversation led by the right demonizing Asian Americans over COVID specifically contributed to this, but I feel like it's something worthy of being discussed, Francesca.
No, yeah, and like I was saying earlier, I think that it does make sense that now that people are coming out more and they're interacting, there's gonna be more attacks on a group of people that have been demonized this entire time. And I think that oftentimes we hear that, oh, the China virus or Kung flu, and it seems so basic and stupid and hack that you don't really think it's gotta be more than that. There's gotta be, and this is the other thing I've been hearing, like, well, what is it? Is there like some secret Reddit, thread that we don't know about, some 4chan thing, some 8chan thing? Like, what's going on? It might just be as stupid and as basic as Kung flu. It might just be as stupid and as basic as, well, let's demonize an entire group of people for this global pandemic that our government utterly failed at containing.
Yeah, and then pretend that it's so weird because when it can be used to attack China, it's something that they're very worked up about. Can you believe that China would do this? Why would the Chinese government? Why would the Chinese do this? But outside of that, it's being exaggerated. It's not a big deal. We don't need to worry about it. Really, no, you shouldn't do anything. You literally shouldn't even stand 6 feet away from someone. You shouldn't put cloth over your face because it's that little of a deal. But wait, the Chinese did it. It's a really big deal that the Chinese did this thing that doesn't really matter. It's really weird how things can matter or not. Like Tucker Carlson, for one day in the past few months, cared about the vaccine, and that was when they were going to give the vaccine to black and brown people, and he called that white genocide. And then he went right back to saying that you shouldn't take it because it's probably gonna do mind control for Bill Gates or something. But anyway, so they did this, the demonizing China, the Kung flu, and a million other things. And it wasn't just Trump, they used it casually on Fox News. The online right, that was like literally they thought the funniest thing last year. And it would be one thing if a year goes by and then, oh my God, there's been a lot of harassment and attacks against Asian Americans. And obviously this is the single worst day of it, but let's bear in mind that this wasn't the entirety of it. This has been going on, but people were saying it at the time that this is gonna result in that. And yet they kept doing it. And now we have the result. What are we supposed to do when they can so recklessly do something that is so easily, predictably linked to violence? And it doesn't seem to hurt them with advertisers. It certainly doesn't hurt them with their audience. Nothing will seemingly be done. They have a bigger audience than they did a year ago. And they're certainly, especially with Tucker Carlson, making far more money than they were a year ago. So what are we supposed to do when they're allowed to do this? The link is so clear.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what a lot of communities of color have been facing. I mean, this is also a year of massive police brutality, specifically against Black Americans. And at some point, you throw your hands up and you're like, well, what if no one's offering solutions? I mean, the demonization of the right, the like giant, everyone's Antifa and they wanna they wanna destroy us. You're like, no, everyone is actually incredibly far too civil, far too generous. Every time we're being asked to never link these events, it's a bad apple, he had a bad day, right? What are you asking people to do time and time again? You're asking people to handhold racist murderers again and again and again. And many of those murderers are police officers. So never be surprised if people are gonna actually start to stand up for themselves. And I would argue maybe even start to fight back. But of course, I can't even say that because then the right wing will say that I'm calling everyone to arms. No, sadly, we have to rise above that. And sadly, the left is always better on that because we believe in that thing called human rights, But it's just, it is frustrating. It's aggravating, and the fact that we don't have actual justice, the fact that we need more investigation of hate crimes, that we need solutions that are not about policing, and we need to get creative. And look, I think this is not an aberration, guys. This is part of a defund the police movement, a refund other areas of our communities and of our lives. This is all part of that. This is part of the same rubric. This is also part of necessary gun control. Yeah, I know we're gonna talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, we do have to take our first break. There's a lot of other news we're gonna be talking about, so stick around, lots more where that came from. come back, let's see what's going on with the audience. Dave T was one of several people that had comments on that first story. Dave T says, Georgia sheriff's gaslighting of murders of Asian women is absolutely part of the functionality of white supremacy, telling the oppressed that what they know is happening is not happening. It is part of the violence. Yeah, and he's gonna have to put out some kind of statement, right? Like you can't say all of those insane things without at least trying to cover your ass on that, right? It just seems so weird. Okay, the goddess says not only was that officer doing PR for that murderer and putting his talking points in the public consciousness, he's doing the job of the defense lawyers. Sex addiction and mental distress could be used to defend the shooter. Well, they'll certainly try. Again, I think that what he says about it is not the most important thing, the actual thing that he did. We have a super chat from Electric Blue Omelet Dragon who says, my 1400 was deposited today. Sharing the love with TYT, you folks have become like friends over last year. I only see a couple people in my pod and not often, but I see you folks every day. Thanks for being there. It's a very nice super chat, Electric Blue. Thank you for that. Thank you to new YouTube members on the main channel, Peter Hamby and Christine Hussar. Thank you for that. There's a super chat from BC Trumpet the Produce Dragon. It says, fantastic week. Actually shaping up that way. A lot of Francesca this week. Okay, how much time do we have? That lens cap is right in the way of it. Grasshopper says, TYT is always keeping it real. Well, we certainly try, and we very much appreciate you joining us. We're gonna try to continue with that same spirit as we launch into so much other news, but we'll be back with that in just a sec. Welcome back, everyone, to the Young Turks. Francesca, you ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay, let's do this. Earlier today, the House successfully passed the Violence Against Women Act as expected, and as expected, because this is America, it was an oddly divisive piece of legislation. It passed 244 to 172. 172 votes against the Violence Against Women Act. There were just 29 Republicans who joined all Democrats in support of it. Now, a few years back when this passed in the House as well, I believe it was 32 Republicans then. So violence against women apparently acceptable to slightly more Republicans than it was just a couple of years ago. And some of the comments from Republicans who said that they couldn't support this, that it's needlessly partisan, Francesca, needlessly partisan to, for instance, the current bill would expand victim services and reauthorize grant programs for the criminal justice response to domestic and sexual violence. It also includes provisions that would expand housing options for survivors and end immunity for non-native perpetrators of sexual violence on tribal lands. It would also close the so-called boyfriend loophole to prevent dating partners and stalkers convicted of domestic violence or abuse from purchasing and owning firearms. And I'm going to guess that that's actually probably one of the main things that's causing so many Republicans to say this is needlessly partisan.
Yes, the last point, which is you can only be violent if you're married. And even then, it's probably okay in a lot of their minds. Yeah, the boyfriend loophole once again, which is right. You know, just because you're not in an actual marriage with someone doesn't mean that they can't like be violent toward you in the home. So yes, that is probably what it was part of. This also lapsed right? Like this has been dangling this bill for a while.
Passed in 1994, updated and reauthorized in 2000, 2005, 2013, expired at the end of 2018 due to a government shutdown. Briefly renewed by a resolution reopening the government, but expired again in 2019. So, it only takes a couple decades or whatever to get around to this. But yeah, in terms of the boyfriend loophole, I mean, so much of this is just so obvious, such common sense. But we already know there's like no better predictor of when a guy is gonna eventually kill a woman than that he committed an act of domestic violence against her. Like, of all of the terrible parts of this, we at least have the silver lining that it does provide a warning. And in theory, something could be done if we lived in a rational society. But instead, we have a couple hundred Republicans in elected office who believe that sending some sort of signal to the NRA is far infinitely more valuable than stopping women from being needlessly murdered by their domestic partners.
Is the NRA even still a thing? I mean, I know they've gone to Texas, but like how many times over bankrupt are they? This is, again, the ways that I just can't get my head around Republican women, and I can't get my head around the idea that they at all believe in feminism or care about women's rights or care about women's equality. Because, if anything happens to them, if anything, I mean, they basically just protect the wealthiest constituents. If something happens to a woman who's wealthy or has a second home, just go to the second home or go, like the ability to access any kind of refuge from a violent partner is directly correlated to how much resources you have. That is absolutely true. And this is the timeless thing about, you don't want to be dependent on the government for anything. Well, yeah. That's cool, lady who wears pearls on a Tuesday. I don't know, like, what are you doing? I mean, look, pearls on a Saturday, fine. But just, I mean, this is the entire ideology of Republican women, which is, don't rely on the government, just rely on your big, strong partner who hopefully won't be brutalizing you or, trying to hurt you. The second thing I'll say is,
oh no, go on.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying the only other thing I can imagine some Republican women saying is just get a gun. Like, doesn't matter if you're like potentially at risk of being murdered. That's just a better reason to have a gun. So they really get it both ways. The potential murderer gets to buy more guns, and it actually sort of, in some ways, puts pressure on the women to arm themselves as well. It's it's hateful and cruel and needless, but it does sell guns.
And yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing I was gonna say is that, again, we silo these issues so much. So we see the Violence Against Women Act as just a thing about, it's just women. It only applies to women. Yay, women, and then men's rights activists are sounding off and they're being red-pilled right now. Well, guess what? A lot of statistics show that mass murderers, people who do things like open fire on spas, have histories of domestic violence, have histories of brutalizing their loved ones. And so if we actually take those crimes seriously, if we actually prevent those perpetrators from getting firearms, we could save other lives, right? The same ways that rape cases are always treated as some like weird perversion. They're always like, we put them do a rape kit and then toss them in a storage unit to be left for 50 years later. It's real cases that have done that, right? Turns out rapists, also murderers. Hey, weird how that happens, that violent criminals would do other violent crimes. Yeah, so if you actually follow the rape case, you could have prevented a murder case. So again, we're being told that these are separate issues, it has nothing to do with gun violence, it has nothing to do with other people. It's just women getting what they want. I realize I'm just sort of imagining the right winger and Tucker Carlson. Because that's how much real estate they take up in my brain. But anyway, it's important to name this. This is super important to not let lapse and to fight for.
Yeah, and finally, in terms of where it goes from here, there's some people like Joni Ernst says that they're going to have a Republican version of this that can pass. Okay, what exactly would the difference be? I think I know. It's stripping out anything having to do with guns because we want to make sure that we keep these guys armed. But maybe that's possible. And maybe that's the actual thing. Maybe you can get 10 Republicans to sign on to this. But if you can't, and if the changes they would make would so defang the Violence Against Women Act that it doesn't end up passing, you know what you get to do? You get to add this to the list of things that people like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin just don't value as much as they value the dignity of the filibuster and that grand tradition of our deliberative body. It would be great. I really wish we could stop women from being murdered, but I just value the filibuster too much to pass it.
Yes.
But that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. HR 1 you can put on there. I mean, how many different bills? I would love to see some questions to Kyrsten Sinema about that because it's coming. It's gonna go to the Senate. It's almost certainly gonna be filibustered. Why do you value the filibuster so much more? I'd like to see that. And you know what, with that, why don't we talk a little bit about the filibuster actually?
Knew you were going there.
I was, that's a transition for you and I just made it awkward, damn. Anyway, Joe Biden recently had an interview and indicated potential support for reforming, if not getting rid of the filibuster. Let's take a look.
Here's the choice. I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate and back in the old days when you used to be around there. And that is that a filibuster, you had to stand up and command the floor. And you had to keep talking alone. You couldn't call for, no one could say, quorum call. Once you stopped talking, you lost that, and someone could move in and say, I moved the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
So you're for that reform. You're for bringing back the talking filibuster.
I am. That's what it was supposed to be. Look, I think, don't hold me to the numbers, George, but I think between 1960 and 2000, there were like, I'm making this number up, I don't know. There were like, 50 filibusters. And now they're like 200 since then. Since that
just put a
rule
hold
changed.
on it, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, so the idea, it almost is getting to the point where there's, democracy's having a hard time functioning. A hard time functioning.
That's an understatement. But anyway, some good numbers there, and he's totally right. Again, he's just sort of making up the numbers, but we know that it's true. The filibuster was never used in the sort of just expected, casual, let's not even discuss it sort of way that it became under the Obama administration. So that would potentially be significant. What do you think about that, Francesca?
Yeah, I mean, I think the more you learn about the filibuster, the more you're like, nope, abolish, just like ICE, you're like, abolish. But of course, this is Joe Biden we're talking about. And so, I think as I learn more about the filibuster itself, you're like, oh yeah, just like a lot of things that have been abused in this country, this has been bastardized. This has been completely taken out of the original context when it was enacted, and it could be walked back. So yes, there is room for reform. You can put the onus on the minority instead of the onus on the majority, which doesn't make any sense as it stands now.
It doesn't.
And and so without getting into all the different little ways on how it can be reformed, because I'll leave that to smarter people than me, I think that those steps are good, and especially if someone like Joe Manchin is on board for it, well, we've got to bow down to Manchin because he's got us all by the, No, but I think that's good. It's good. It's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, and let's quickly just buttress Biden's point there with some actual numbers. So according to Ezra Klein in the New York Times, from 1917 to 1970, the Senate took 49 votes to break filibusters. 49, those are cloture votes. That is fewer than one each year. Since 2010, it's been taken on average more than 80 votes each year to end filibusters, more than 80. And there'd probably be more if our representatives sort of worked hard to correct problems. They try to pass so little legislation that honestly, there aren't nearly as many opportunities to filibuster as there should be in a functioning democracy. But that is there. And the sort of reform that Biden is talking about there is one that Manchin has recently indicated he might be in support of. I'm sure he will go back on that soon. But one thing I would like on people like him and Sinema and others, I'm sure there are others that don't want to get rid of the filibuster. They just haven't been identified in the same clear way that those two have. They keep getting asked, will you reform it? Or maybe it'll be tied to like the Biden agenda, but in a very vague way. Like, would you support the filibuster if it means that Biden doesn't get what he's working for? I really want to see it tied directly to individual bills. Like, you will not be able to raise the minimum wage, even to the $11 that Manchin's in favor of, if you keep the filibuster. You're choosing the filibuster over the minimum wage. Why is that? Okay, you're not gonna be able to pass HR 1 with the filibuster. You're choosing the filibuster over HR 1. Why are you doing that? Violence Against Women Act, any number of other pieces of legislation. As long as we make it vague and philosophical and just about the norms and all of that, they get to hide in the same way that Republicans hide against voting against this legislation by using the filibuster. Let's make it specific. In the same way that the filibuster in use is supposed to draw attention to that opposition, let's put some attention on Manchin and Sinema's opposition to reforming the filibuster. If they really value it over this legislation, they believe that is the moral position to hold, it is a justifiable position to hold, then make them hold it in interviews. Now that probably will just result in them doing less interviews. But if one of these journalists gets it, stop making it vague. Ask them about specific things that are on the line if they maintain their opposition to reform. That would be my advice.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And because, especially because we don't know who they're like, why? What are you doing this for? Why are you upholding this at all? And it's a complete miscalculation and a misread of the Republican Party that's been using the filibuster in bad faith to block anything, any kind of progress, any legislation, and then say, look, see, government doesn't work for you. Oh well, better gut it and sell it for parts. Yay, yay, yay! Make my friends rich. Make my friends rich. You know, like that's the goal. We've seen it. It happened in 2016 when Trump was elected. So like, you know, and this is the thing, like I'm all for reforming, but if, you know, Biden says over and over again, you can't question people's, what he's like, you can question their actions, but never their motives. And it's like, I'm pretty sure we can question Republicans' motives when it comes to the filibuster. They are completely bad faith about it.
Yeah, well, then look, I'm gonna, just because you've opened up the door. While he did say that he's in favor of the reform, he also said, I think the epiphany is going to come between now and 2022. Ooh. With that epiphany being the Republicans will suddenly wake up from the Trump fever dream that they've had, and they'll become reasonable, and they'll decide that democracy still counts for something, and they should, you know, give a damn about their constituents, or even the people who aren't their constituents in theory. Because he was asked about that by, I believe it was Stephanopoulos, who said, you know, you said this is gonna happen, it hasn't happened. And Biden, rather than using that as an opportunity to say, you know what, I was trying to unify the country, but we do have to take stock of the state of the Republican Party and, you know, identify what they are. But he didn't say that. He said, oh, it'll happen later. It'll happen by 2022. And as I said on the damage report, because the midterm elections being right around the corner is gonna lead to more bipartisanship with the Republicans. That's usually how it works in America, but he said it. He said it was straight-faced, he said it in an interview, so we have to assume that that's what he really still thinks will happen.
Bless his, you know, little naive centrist heart, you know, it's just, I so want the world and the political world to be as Biden thinks it is somehow. Yeah. Like, ooh, you know, remember when Republicans didn't touch the third rail of racism, or they did, but it was just thinly veiled, you know, and they were like, you know, mask off. Now it's mask off. Before it was mask on. You know, that kind of thing. And he did, which is funny because his whole impetus for running was when Trump basically equated Nazis with being good people, and it's like, do you not get it, or are you just not saying that you don't get it? Like, we are in a vastly different time. I mean, it was all bets off after January 6th, you know, all bets off about whether this party is playing fairly or cares at all, or whether there's gonna be there's not gonna no epiphany. If they start another party, look, if they create another party, maybe Liz Cheney at the helm, Romney up in there.
That'll do.
I wouldn't hold your breath though. So, you know, but I do think, yes, yay on the reform, once again, should be abolished. But if he can get this done, let's do it. Absolutely, let's do it and make it harder to block this legislation.
I agree. With that, we're gonna take our second break, but there's still more to come. We're gonna have Donald Trump deserving credit, slightly, briefly. Find out for what after this. Welcome, everybody. Let's get after it. Anyway, let's see what's going on with the audience. Affectos had a comment about cops and guns. Says, I wonder how many cops are going to be stripped of their guns if it comes out that they're abusing their wives or girlfriends. That's opening a can of worms there if that passes. We'll see what the union thinks. Null Unit, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Really do appreciate that. Imitation Asian says, when Fuel sang about having a bad day, it didn't go from spilled her coffee, broke her shoelace to decided to commit a hypersexualized hate crime and murdered people. Absolutely full of anger today. Because I think it's a really good point, I will allow the music reference and the reading of lyrics on the show. Normally, I'm opposed to that. Anyway, okay, Howard D says, someone like Candace Owens will blame Cardi B's WAP performance at the Grammys for that shooter's sex addiction. Oh no. That's a really good prediction, actually.
That's what's gonna happen. That's exactly.
That's a good prediction. Oh, I really hope that Candace Owens isn't watching this because she's calling up Laura Ingraham right now to get booked.
And then if that happens, I hope that Constance Wu and Cardi B do a WAP performance together.
I wish that anyway.
Yeah, obviously.
Anyway, let's see. Ray Turner and the Bearded Dragon said 125 to 165 women killed by partners every year in the UK. Yeah. Well, we have some particular problems in the US, but let's not forget that men kill women everywhere at all times and always. British 32 says, hi, John and Francesca, enjoying TYT again. Friend of mine had a prenup with hidden clause she didn't know about. So when her husband raped her, it was classed as consent or she would lose everything on divorce from him. That's just about one of the most sickening things I've ever read. I cannot believe that. So sorry to hear that about your friend. Roger Harris says, we're so tired of paying the price for a picture perfect Biden presidency. It's about the people. Yeah, and look, we gave him some credit and took away some credit in that. I will say, he does at least seem to be able to be moved a bit on the filibuster, which is a significant thing to be moved on. That is good. We had a president in Trump that could never be moved in any productive direction for 4 years. Biden at least maybe can be. So that is something. Again, as we said, it's about choosing your opponent, and this opponent can potentially be bested at least. With that, we are gonna take a short break, but come back because there's more news after this. Welcome back to the Young Turks, everyone. It's me, John, and Francesca. How's it going, Francesca?
Hi. Good.
Hi.
Still here.
Glad to have you here. You're still here. You might wish that you weren't soon, because we're gonna talk about something that's gonna be really fun. But anyway, let's get into it. Pretty much the only time that the vaccine is talked about on Fox News, they are telling you that it is right and proper and just and patriotic to be really suspicious of it. But that changed, at least briefly last night when Maria Bartiromo had Donald Trump on and asked him if he thinks that people watching the show should get the vaccine. And here's what he had to say.
Mr. President, I know that you received the vaccine. Mrs. Trump also got the vaccine. Would you recommend to our audience that they get the vaccine then?
I would recommend it, and I would recommend it to a lot of people that don't want to get it, and a lot of those people voted for me, frankly. But again, we have our freedoms, and we have to live by that.
Francesca, he just told the Fox viewers to get the vaccine. Is he the best guy now? Wait, that's not even real applause, I don't think. I mean, he did a good thing. Should we give him credit? And if so, how much?
Yeah, that slow clap is exactly what he deserves. If he was on camera from the grease-stained bed that he was calling from, then I would have given him all the props. I just want to see his face when he says all that. But also notice, no one has ever bungled leadership quite in the way that Donald Trump bungles leadership. He is at once like a strongman leader, dictator, but also like a naive, I don't know, church-going like ditz. Like he's just so he's just like, but we've got freedom, so whatever. Anyway, this country, you should get it, but we do have freedom. Like you still don't take this seriously. You show us the arm, just roll up your sleeve once again. Show us your, little like sluggish, ripply, just show us where you got the vaccine. Obama did. He showed us the delts. Show us the delt. Get it again. Or show us the photo of you getting the vaccine. And then, one of your little sycophants will draw you like Superman flying through the air with your, like flappy delts, like flying in the wind. I'm just saying there's more he could do. And he just has no gravity. He could not do gravity if he tried.
Yeah, well, for the first time in this clip so far, I've heard the voice of Donald Trump and the voice of Francesca, and I found her much more troubling than Trump for the first time ever. But anyway, I appreciated the slow clap. So did Mr. Unknown, who said the slow clap is actually a condition that Trump has been struggling with for several decades. But anyway, Peace, Love, and Dave says today's the day Donald Trump became president. I guess, am I having a Van Jones moment? Is that what this is? But no, I mean, look. What's on the line is huge. It is whether we beat the virus or not. And our best chance is getting a lot of people vaccinated. The biggest obstacle to that is conservatives, especially Republican men. And nobody appeals to Republican men more than maybe Marjorie Greene, but probably Trump. So if he tells them to get it, that's good. Now, I share your concern about the fact that he wasn't on video, which makes it almost to certainty that the QAnon forums are saying that was faked audio and it wasn't actually him. He would never tell us to do that. But considering how opposed to the vaccine Fox has been, how Tucker Carlson right after that on his program told people to be suspicious of the vaccine, I do think it's important. And I wanna know what you all think out in the audience. So we have a poll. It's up at TYT.com/polls. Will Trump's pro-vaccine statements result in more of his supporters deciding to get vaccinated? And you can answer yes or no. And I do think it is very important. We may not like him, we may want him to be gone, but at this point, just about the most important thing he can do is encouraging people to get the vaccine. So I hope that more people ask him constantly.
I'm surprised that after all the wheelings and dealings with Moderna, they didn't make him the spokesperson, and to be totally honest with you, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. I think that would have been fine. Emoluments clause, be damned. Be the spokesperson for a big pharma company. We pretty much live in that world now. But he can't go all the way. Sure, we're gonna do all the backhand deals, the backdoor deals. We're gonna give them all the money, gonna give them the development money, et cetera, like exclusivity, don't have to sell the patent rights, anything like that. But I'm not gonna promote it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, because I need that anti-vax vote.
He could get so much credit. Just go around the country promoting it. But he won't. He won't. I think he gets that his audience is fundamentally opposed to it. That is one of the things that might be, a step too far for them.
Don't tell me he doesn't need the money. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
He needs the money. Okay, keep going.
Well, actually, you know what? You bring up the vaccine and money. Why don't we turn to our last story, which is about the vaccine and money. The deployment of the vaccine was pretty quick compared to some of the early predictions, and shockingly, even in America, available broadly at very low or no cost. Treatment for COVID, not so much, but the vaccine has been. But will that actually last? Especially if this vaccine, virus becomes something that we as a nation or the world are dealing with for many years, if it branches off into a ton of different mutations, we might end up having to get booster shots for a very long time. And so there was this virtual Barclays Global Healthcare Conference where a couple of high-ranking employees at Pfizer were talking about some of the potential for earning more money in the future. Let's take a look.
If you look at how current demand and current pricing is being driven, it's clearly not being driven by what I'll call normal market conditions, normal market forces. It's really been driven by kind of the pandemic state that we've been in and the needs of governments to really secure doses from the various vaccine suppliers. So what I believe is we move from a pandemic state, from a pandemic situation to an endemic situation, normal market forces, normal market conditions will start to kick in. And factors like efficacy, booster ability, clinical utility will basically become very important. And we view that as, quite frankly, a significant opportunity for our vaccine from a demand perspective, from a pricing perspective, given the clinical profile of our vaccine.
Okay, so there's a lot to dive into, Francesca, but before we get to the substance of it, I don't know for sure. It's difficult to say from that image, and it is possible that some sort of virtual Zoom background. Was he in front of the beach in that? I don't know if we can put that up briefly. I think out of his window was sand and a deck chair and the ocean. Maybe it's virtual, I don't know. But if you're talking about how we need to find a way to exploit the global need for life-saving medicine to get more money, don't even make us think that you're at the beach, that you're gonna log off of this Zoom and then take a little swim with a manatee. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I'm just putting that out there as a potential.
And then you're gonna carve Trump into its back, huh?
Oh,
Is that what manatee you're gonna? First of all,
anyway, what do you think?
He's on a floating tax haven, John. Peter Thiel set it up. It's fine. It's not actually a beach. It's just a floating. So I don't ever want to be on a Pfizer Zoom ever. Like that is TMI on like corruption. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I know we have to talk about it, but I like watch that and I'm like, yep, don't want to know. Do. Now that's not obviously a good response. The correct response is we need to rein in big pharma, but you can just see with the cavalier way that they talk about this, that absolutely they're looking to cash in. And this is, mind you, like this is when, let's say, I think it's 10 countries have administered 75% of the vaccine in total, right? Countries like the United States and the UK are racing far, far above countries that have not seen a lick of this vaccine, who are begging the World Trade Organization to make companies like Pfizer drop the patents so that their production companies can start to produce them at a low cost. But that's not the way it goes. And so, this whole time I thought that like behind the scenes of working on the vaccine, they were just like, fairies, like the Keebler elves, and they were just sweet and little, they were just Pillsbury Doughboy, and they were just wanted us to live. And I feel like that's not true.
Well, I mean, of course we should make a distinction between the actual scientists who are working on it and the corporate executives that have as little connection to that as I do.
Yeah, the scientists are Keebler elves. Oh yeah, they're very adorable.
I mean, look at Fauci. That's all the evidence you need. But yeah, I like you're rightfully pointing out that there are many countries that have none, literally none. Some really hard hit, like, and it's not always for the same reason. Some of it's mismanagement. I mean, Brazil has done very little vaccination and they're losing more people in the last week than any other country. But some countries just can't get any. They can't buy it, and because of what you pointed out, they can't manufacture it. So like we have these plans that the US is contributing money to, COVAX, to eventually distribute some of it. And like Biden, to his credit, I guess, said, once we have excess supply, we'll start sending some overseas. But like people are dying now. They can't wait to die until later on when you decide that now it's acceptable. Like, they could start making it. That's a thing that could happen. We could send them the PDF and then they could manufacture the vaccine and potentially thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of lives could be saved.
Yeah.
How is this the way that it works? And I know it's naive, and obviously we let people die of all sorts of diseases that they don't need to die of. But like, this is supposed to be the thing that got us all like together for once. Like, malaria is complicated or whatever. But this one, we had commercials talking about what heroes we consider people to be. And it turns out, oh my God, some of that might not have been genuine. It might have just been companies trying to make money as they continue to. Anyway, okay. That's gonna be the end of the first hour. And soon Francesca is gonna take over. We got one more break until then, so we will see you in just a few.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. Yeah. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I've seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com. We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
back to the second hour of the Young Turks, brought to you by Francesca Fiorentini. How's it going, Francesca?
Really?
I'm
I'm sponsoring this? Oh, wow.
You're delivering it. So what do you got?
Well, John, millions of Americans are starting to receive those $1,400 as a part of the stimulus rescue bill. They're receiving them in their bank accounts, except there is one caveat that apparently no one has been talking about, which is that those stimulus checks are subject now to debt collection. Yeah, that's right. That means that those who have paid unpaid medical or credit card bills have a court-ordered judgment against them, could see some or all of their expected 1,400 checks disappear. Under law, if a creditor has sued for outstanding debt and a court order is placed for garnishment, banks are required to comply and turn the funds over to the creditor. Now, for some context, the first $1,200 stimulus check that was passed under the CARES Act did have a caveat that debt collectors could not actually claim any of that money. That also applied to the second stimulus in December, the $600. And for some reason, it was left out of the biggest stimulus bill yet, which is a big problem. The latest bill, and the reason for that is, the latest bill was passed by budget reconciliation, and apparently that's got special rules where everything must have a budgetary impact. So protecting public's money from private debt collectors wouldn't qualify, and therefore the Senate had to leave that part out. That's for David Dayen of the American Prospect, which is great. He's done some really good reporting on this particular thing. Just so you all know, obviously people are watching this. You're not a stranger to debt. I'm sure many people have it, but in case you needed some background, families often rely on consumer debt to make ends meet, to help them get ahead, and that debt is costly. So families actually owe a lot more consumer debt on average, white families actually owe a lot more consumer debt on average with $32,838, but they also have a lot more assets, such as cars, to offset that debt, in addition to earning more money that makes it easier to pay off the debt. The risks to financial security of families of color, though, is even greater than the numbers suggest. Consumer debt amounted to 50.5% of all debt for African Americans in September of 2019. So once again, the ability to collect debt on these stimulus checks is going to disproportionately hurt African American families. John, how did we miss this?
Why break the streak throughout the pandemic, I guess? If you wanted to find some sort of correlation to help you track down the people who most desperately need the aid, I feel like those who are being aggressively pursued by debt collectors is probably a good start. I think that would probably identify a lot of people who probably really need the help. So the idea that they would be left to these vultures to soak up that money. And I'm glad that you pointed out sort of one of the structural impediments to it, but I feel like there had to be something. There had to be something that could have been done to shield this money, because now the result is sort of similar to a point that I think Representative Ocasio-Cortez was making, which was you're gonna have the Democrats campaigning on more aid, coming in and providing less aid. And now also, maybe you don't get it at all. So you've been promising and promising, and then since it was signed, you've been talking about how awesome it is. And then, I mean, how many do we think are gonna constantly be checking their account and nothing ever shows up, and they're gonna feel like doubly betrayed by the Democrats for not finding some way to shield that money?
Absolutely, it's a total oversight. And once again, I mean, we talked about the filibuster in the first hour, but this is what happens when you can only pass things through budget reconciliation, which is a total workaround so that Democrats didn't have to, actually get to 60 votes, right? This was the workaround. This was supposed to be the way out. And then they can't even include this because, I don't know, was this another parliamentarian rule? With the first time when they said that we couldn't have a $15 minimum wage in this bill, but it is such an oversight. So apparently Senator Ron Wyden is trying to introduce legislation that would shield payments from garnishment, but that's not gonna stop the issue right away. So apparently people are being told to take the money out as soon as possible. So if those of you keep checking your bank accounts, and if you owe any debt, just take it out. Take it out immediately.
That seems like good advice, but I mean, I don't know in particular with this if maybe it's modified by some of the stuff we were talking about, but isn't garnishment before you even get it generally?
Right.
And you pointed out that his bill won't be an immediate solution, but if it's not an immediate solution, how is it a solution? Like, what is he gonna have the bill ready to go in a week and then they'll debate it and it'll get filibustered in 3 weeks? And oh, by the way, they took your money 2 weeks ago. How could that possibly be a solution unless it's some sort of replacement of the funds, some sort of tax credit or something like that? I don't understand how any of this could help people, because once those debt collectors take the money, I have a feeling they're not giving it up. Certainly not without a fight. And this doesn't strike me as a Senate or a political system that's willing to fight the debt collectors.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, at this point, you have to do better than this emergency last minute bill. You got to give people the money back somehow. It's it's got to be reflected later. But once again, the reflected later that's still not the $1,400 stimulus check immediately that people need right now, and it's definitely not the $2,000 that was promised initially. And there are more progressive banking institutions, credit unions, Americans for Financial Reform, they are calling on Congress because they're saying, look, if a court order, if there's a court order, there's nothing we can do to prevent these folks, accounts from being like garnished or taken. We can't keep this money in people's accounts. It's just, it's so, there had to be something again within all the other things that this stimulus bill didn't have. And I feel like this is just kind of another cruel joke. And the fact that it falls on the backs of the poorest Americans and Americans of color is like, yeah, of course. These are the Americans, especially that gave you the win, gave Biden the win, and I can't protect you from a debt collector.
Yeah. And the final thing I want to say is one of the reasons I'm glad that you're talking about this in the show today is I think we've been as a nation focused on the checks, which makes sense, but there are so many other issues sort of that in terms of conversation are around the periphery, but in terms of their impact on people's lives, they're not at all around the periphery. Like the ongoing conversation about the eviction and foreclosure crisis that's coming, that some representatives, to their credit, are still working on. Ilhan Omar is working on it, and some members of the squad have been talking about it for a full year. But issues like that, some stuff being tax deductible and some not being taxed, like that can make a massive difference on what this aid actually means to people. And so it's good that they passed the COVID bill. And it's good that in theory, they're gonna talk about the minimum wage, but there are a lot of other sort of fundamental elements of the system that are so fundamentally anti-consumer, anti-working class. We need a party that's going to go after debt collectors, not just to shield this money, but to annihilate the current status quo of debt collection, which is one of the worst things in America. The credit rating agencies are an absolute disaster, but you barely hear any talk about it from either of the parties. All of these are things that need to be discussed, and maybe they're not, right out the gate the first priority that you work on, but they do have to be in the conversation.
An easy fix for Biden on this, a little mea culpa: abolish $50,000 of student loan debt.
I'll forgive him if he does that. Sure, that'd be good.
Super easy fix. Oopsies, here you go. Deleted.
Wait, when you say it's easy, do you mean that like he could literally do it right now? By the time we get back from the next commercial break, he could have signed an executive order? He could have. It's weird that he doesn't. It's weird.
It's all in his hands.
Well, it could be. What's next?
We rolling into this? Well, let's do it. Well, Democratic Governor Cuomo is under fire for lying about COVID deaths. Republican Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, seems to see his star rise and rise, even though he's done the same when it comes to COVID deaths. And articles like this are helping him do it. This is from CNN. A year into the pandemic, Florida is booming and Republican Governor DeSantis is taking credit. And then from the article, DeSantis has gambled to take a laissez-faire approach appears to be paying off, at least politically, at least for now, as other governors capturing attention in the opening phase of the pandemic now face steeper challenges. That's from Jeff Zeleny of CNN. maybe a cousin of Ron DeSantis, because my God, this is some good PR for him. Is it true though? Okay, so Ron is riding this wave. Is it actually true? Turns out not really. When adjusted for population, Florida has a lower rate of deaths than New York, including at long-term care facilities like nursing homes, but a higher rate of cases overall. And it leads the country in terms of number of cases of the more contagious and deadlier UK variant of the virus. And then the SF Chronicle reports Florida is currently seeing notably higher levels of coronavirus transmission than California. And now with spring break in full force, people are flocking to Florida's beaches, many flouting COVID-19 protocols. So once again, COVID-19 protocols in Florida, insofar as they existed or that their mayors tried to make them happen, DeSantis it's all bets off, really. And he's being lauded for it.
Yeah, because the sort of people doing the lauding are, like him, far more interested in sort of macroeconomic numbers than the actual people who are dead. And maybe in theory, worried that they might die. But I mean, once they're dead, we're moving on. Toot, the economy's booming or whatever. Yeah, it's shocking that people would flout the COVID-19 protocols. Again, as you say, to the extent that they even exist, since DeSantis has been telling them for a year that it's their patriotic duty to cough in each other's mouths. I wonder why they would have come to these sorts of conclusions. And the fact that that Florida has a lower rate of deaths than New York, even though, as you point out, they have a lot of other bad numbers. Well, yeah, New York was like first hit. And we didn't know anything. We literally didn't know how to treat it at that point. We didn't have tests that worked for discovering at that point. Like, okay, if you were worse than New York, that'd be bad news. But the fact that you're slightly better on that metric than New York means virtually nothing, because New York was like worst hit out of any place in the world. And we had basically no defense at that point against it.
Yes, exactly. And just so that everyone remembers, when it comes to actually COVID stats and the lying about deaths, DeSantis oversaw the raid of a whistleblower and former data scientist's home, Rebecca Jones, because she refused to lie about the data. So insofar as we know the data, I'm not sure we can trust it at this point, but because he's a Republican governor and not a Democratic governor, he's celebrated for doing things like this. He's celebrated for lying to his own population. And I mean, things like the medical examiner of Florida called it a sham at one point, but there's no political repercussions because once again, he sees himself as sort of, the MAGA torch carrier. And just to tell you that line continues, I wanna go to this tweet that he had recently, basically trying to explain why kids should be in school. He says, our kids belong in school, and Florida's decision to keep schools open was the right thing to do. When compared to other states of similar size, Florida has fewer pediatric cases per 100,000. Now, there was then a report that sort of blew the top off of that tweet. This is from a local affiliate, an NBC affiliate in Florida, because the graph attached, this is from Alternet, purported to show Florida's rate of pediatric cases to those of Ohio, Illinois, and California, which has nearly twice the population of Florida. But the rate he assigned to Florida, 3,794 cases per 100,000, excluded anyone over 14. Whereas the numbers for Ohio and Illinois included anyone under 20 and California's anyone under 18. So not only is it half the population, but he just didn't include ages 14 to 18. Perfect example of him lying about the data, making false comparisons, and then lauding Florida as this miracle example, which once again, it is not.
Yeah. It's not, but he has the benefit of the media not being particularly critical in this case. And I don't have polls for this, so I don't know for sure. But I would guess that Republicans in Florida probably are more satisfied with the response than we would guess. Because again, they haven't just been convinced that this isn't a serious thing in some sort of vague sense that manifests when they watch Fox News. They really do seem to think that. We covered polls on the Damage Report that the percentage of Republicans who say that the virus is being exaggerated from 1 year ago to just last week, with 500,000 plus deaths between them, is only 1 percentage point different. They lost 1 percentage point of those that say it's being exaggerated. They really do think that. And so has Florida failed? Definitely. I can speak personally. I lost a relative in Florida to COVID. In no small part due to the fact that they don't seem to give a damn about what happens there. But if you're a Republican and you believe that the whole thing's been made up, then sure, why shouldn't you like DeSantis? I mean, Trump likes him. So I think he might actually come out of this looking pretty good, not statistically, but from the point of view of Republicans, I think sure.
Absolutely. And my problem though is with media that is not analyzing this properly. I mean, because you read, it just infuriates me the way that people are like, well, Florida really did do okay relatively. And it's like, okay, and this is what happens when you hyper partisan everything about this pandemic. Red states versus blue states, something that Trump did, right? When you have a patchwork response. So here there's mask mandates, here there's not. Here things are closed, here things are not. And then, journalists and so-called scientists and data analysts are grafting what happened in California to what happened in New York, like you were saying, the epicenter of the pandemic, to what's happening in Florida, and flattening it all when in fact the particularities, the fact that Florida is overall more affluent, there is more space, there are only 20 million people versus California's 40 million people, right? California producing the world's food, or states in the middle of the country that have meat processing plants. It's like these are all factors, and so the metrics that we're looking at this really need to be interrogated. But suffice to say, it's not a success story. It's only a success story, as John is saying, in a vacuum of right-wing propaganda.
Yeah. By the way, there's a commenter who says that the Cuomo, New York had more cases under your God Cuomo. Do you know what program you're watching? Do you think that we love Cuomo? That's a weird thing to think. You're new here, aren't you? But anyway, the final thing I would say is, this is me just throwing this out here. I'm not a scientist, not a data scientist or anything like that. I would guess, pick a random Idaho. If you get COVID in Idaho, I'm gonna guess that there's a good chance that you stay in Idaho, you get tested in Idaho, you get treated in Idaho. Isn't one of the issues with Florida's beaches being packed that not all of those people go home to Florida from there? Like you could go to Florida, get sick in Florida, and then, what do you know? Ohio has another case, or Missouri has another case, or Wisconsin has another case. But they got it in Florida. I don't know, I have no idea how many cases there are, but Florida's pitching itself as a vacay destination. And the issue seems to be in packed vacation touristy type areas. If those people leave, those numbers don't go down as DeSantis issues, but they are a result of DeSantis's approach to COVID.
You just outsource the COVID.
Yeah.
I went to Florida spring break and all I got was COVID. That is the line.
We need to make the t-shirt.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. I'm with Sicky, basically. That's what it should be. Anyway, I think we should probably take our first break. Why don't we do that, and we'll come back and Francesca will show us more news. Welcome back. Let's see what's going on in the audience. Let's see. We have a super chat from William Perry Jr. A big super chat. Thank you very much for the support. Who says the journalism and reporting you get on TYT is above anything you'll get from the media. But when you get 3 hours of John and Francesca in 3 days, it makes me give more stim bucks. Well, thank you. No, there's plenty of good journalism and media out there. I mean, we were talking in the break about one of John Oliver's big research pieces. I think his last one on Tucker Carlson was amazing. There's a lot of good journalism out there, but we do appreciate that you like our commentary. And we have gotten a lot of Francesca this week. Truly fantastic. Over on Twitch, Platinum Yeti gifted 5 subs. The One Wing Dragon gifted 5. Samalin the Kind Dragon gifted 5. Thank you. Tumbles and Flaco Huesos gifted subs. Tell Me What to Put gifted 2 subs. And Cypher Shadow Dragon gifted a sub and sub for 7 months at tier 2. Thank you so much for that. Very nice. In the comments on Twitch, Obi-Wan Kenobi said, "This is not the Wild West. I should not need to buy and carry a gun to feel safe. Civilized society, my butt." I don't know if you can say ass. We can. We can. I'll say both. I'll say all sorts of things.
Butt ass. It's now just butt ass. All right?
And thus, someone is now gonna be butt ass dragon. I guarantee it. And I want Mini Morpho to draw it. Anyway, Lieutenant Mac McGee says, to help with 2IT's debt collection, gave 1,000 bits. C corporations don't need government subsidy money. They can rely on the charity of Americans, just like with healthcare. That's pretty funny. Thank you for that. How much time do we have? We have a minute. Okay. Crazy Lit Asian says, dismissing the race of the victims by the sheriff is another application of the model minority myth. Quote, there is problem, get back in your place. Exactly. And by the way, we didn't know for sure during our talk about that, but the fact that the guy who gave that seemingly spread anti-Asian like racist memes and stuff, that seems relevant. I think we're probably gonna hear more about that soon, Francesca.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Witchy Woman says most of the victims were Korean immigrants. The MSM is reporting them as ethnic Koreans, which is some racist attempt to distance the report as immigrant. I hadn't seen that, but thank you for letting us know. Okay. Peter Hamby says, once you attack people due to a person's ethnicity, you can no longer deny racism. It's in all of us, but most of us have learned to deal with it. One Senator Johnson continues to degrade. Yeah, I don't even want to know what some prominent Republican senators are going to say about these attacks soon. I'm sure Fox is already wild in regards to that. But anyway, we're going to take a short break. We come back, more news for you. Welcome back to the second hour. Francesca, what's next? Francesca, I think you might have accidentally muted yourself. The delivery looked awesome, but I couldn't hear it.
It was so good. Oh my God, you should have been there. I'm not gonna do it again.
Nope, you only get one good read, so let's see what happens now.
Sorry, y'all. Governor Gavin Newsom is taking the pressure off of other disappointing Democratic governors, Andrew Cuomo, by making waves of his own this week. This week he was on Joy-Ann Reid's show on MSNBC and was pressed into a pretty big stance regarding Senator Dianne Feinstein. Take a look.
If in fact Dianne Feinstein were to retire, will you nominate an African-American woman to restore the seat that Kamala Harris is no longer in the United States Senate? And do you have a name in mind?
I have multiple names in mind. We have multiple names in mind, and the answer is yes.
Okay, big if true. Remember, Gavin Newsom appointed California Secretary of State Alex Padilla to Senator Kamala Harris's seat in the Senate, and she was the only African-American woman in the Senate. Others felt like he was trying to prematurely oust Senator Dianne Feinstein, who, by the way, is not planning on retiring. before her term is up, and is in fact planning on running again in 2024 when she will be 90 years old.
But not running, but campaigning.
Campaigning.
I don't think she's going to be running.
No, she's not running. Look, but I do want to say that some people took a great offense. This was from Christine Pelosi, the daughter of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who chided Newsom in a tweet saying, "You don't have to like Dianne Feinstein to see that pushing her out of her elected position for a black woman appointment that you could have made when there was an actual vacancy to win a recall to push you out of your elected position is a very bad look." So we're going to talk about the recall of Governor Gavin Newsom shortly.
Yes.
But John, thoughts on this pretty big, bold statement from Newsom?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, from Christine Pelosi, I think that's a pretty good comment. You just got to unilaterally choose someone, and you could have. There were great names that are apparently on your mind. If I was her hosting the show, my follow-up question would have been, okay, yes, those are names that are on your mind. Do you have one on your tongue? Can you say the name? If you have these great names, and by the way, I doubt they're particularly shocking, just say who they are. What a weird thing to be so like hidden about. Just give us some of the names of people that you're considering. I'm assuming lots of them are well qualified. I doubt many people are like, they're gonna turn you down and they don't wanna leave the house or something. So it's frustrating a bit that he won't define it. But in terms of Dianne Feinstein, I mean, I don't think that she should have run for re-election the last time or the time before that or the time before that. I think that she is effectively in no way representative of California, except perhaps some of its businesses. I think what is she like? Come on, like you're in a position of seniority. You in theory could be a leader of the Democratic Party. What is Dianne Feinstein leading on? What has she led on, by the way? You are holding a position. There's an opportunity cost to a senator. We could have an awesome progressive senator. California should have the two most awesome progressive senators in America. They should. If Gavin Newsom has his way, they probably won't. But I just think she's not doing anything in that position. And I understand that she won, and so we don't get to push her out necessarily. But planning ahead for someone who is, obviously at an advanced age, I don't think that that's unacceptable.
No, and especially when, and this was a bombshell report that, a very reputable journalist, Jane Mayer of the New Yorker, wrote, which was that Dianne Feinstein's staff knows that she's not all there. She is not able to do the job. You can hear her on committee hearings. She often forgets what she's doing. She gave Lindsey Graham a hug in the middle of the pandemic and called the Amy Coney Barrett hearing one of the best hearings she's been a part of. I'm sorry, who are you? Have you not been paying attention? Can you pay attention? And I'm not trying to be ageist, but look, this is not just about being a centrist. This is about being permanently out to lunch. I'm not sure if we can save this, but of course, look, I think it would be cool if Barbara Lee, and only Barbara Lee,
yes,
were a California senator or a senator for California.
I mean, I think there are a lot of great people that could be chosen, but if the idea is that it's going to be a black woman, why not have an awesome progressive? You have Barbara Lee, right, on some of the most important questions of the last few decades. I think that would be an amazing choice.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, Gavin was very much caught off guard, even though he seemed very certain that yes, he would replace Dianne Feinstein with a black woman. But anyway, he's walked back his statement on Tuesday, saying that he was answering more of a hypothetical, even though it didn't sound like it, but with no real anticipation whatsoever that Dianne Feinstein, is going anywhere for years and years. Feinstein should absolutely fill out her term, he said. She's been a friend of mine. She's been a mentor of mine.
Yeah,
okay.
I get it. I get it that he's going to be defensive, and he probably is friends with her. I mean, they're both like California centrists. They probably have been to a lot of parties together for the past few decades. But in terms of, look, I know that the conversation that we've been having and that what he said sort of brings up is uncomfortable. And certainly, look, there is ageism in America. Taking ageism seriously is not a bad thing or unacceptable or anything like that. But I mean, over the last few years, how many Democrats brought up the possible need to invoke something like the 25th Amendment in regards to Donald Trump, worried about his state of mind, his ability to do the job cognitively. How many conversations do we had about that? Well, if we had that, and if it wasn't just about Trump, if it was a legitimate concern about someone in a position of power not being mentally equipped for it, well, then we have to be consistent about that. And if you have insider reports about her inability to do the job, then that isn't enough to say that you got to kick her out or anything like that. But people can start to plan ahead and try to figure out how you would figure that out. I don't think that that's unacceptable.
Am I
crazy?
You look, I mean, everyone should have a plan for the inevitable or not inevitable. I'm trying not to make death analogies, but yes, have a plan. I guess I want to move on to the other aspect of this, right? Sure. The political aspect of this, because Christine Pelosi is not wrong that this does feel like a kind of a deflection from what's going on in Gavin's own backyard, which is this recall effort, which the signature collection ends today. And the campaign needs to get 1.5 million signatures to trigger a new election, a recall election. The signatures have to be verified. There's a 30-day window to let any signatories basically rescind it. There has to be a cost estimate, and then there'd be a date. And Democrats are very much coming to Newsom's defense, and he is gathering some forces. There was an official Stop the Republican Recall campaign, which has been the clearest sign yet that the political establishment believes the recall election will qualify. They'll get those signatures. But Senators Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Alex Padilla, as well as Representative Katie Porter and Georgia Democrat Stacey Abrams are all announcing their opposition to these recall efforts. And I wanted you to take a look at this defense ad that is being rolled out in his defense.
Who's behind the partisan recall of Governor Gavin Newsom? Anti-vaccine QAnon extremists, violent white supremacists like the Proud Boys who attacked our nation's capital on January 6th, and the same right-wing Republican politicians who supported Donald Trump's attempt to overturn the election. Of course, paid for by the Republican National Committee. Instead of helping fight the pandemic, National Republicans are coming to fight Californians. Add your name to help stop the Republican recall. It's a power grab.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sure. There's probably some of that, but it's like, let's just list all of the people you hate. It's QAnon and the Proud Boys and the guy who hit on your girlfriend one time at the bar and the Lannisters. They're all behind it. I guess, sure.
I mean, I do think that there are people on the left, Anna's one of them, who want to recall Newsom, who are not satisfied with Newsom. I'm not satisfied with Newsom. He's, creating lockdown orders and then defying them by going and having an expensive, dinner at whatever it was, Chinese Laundry or something. He has been inadequate when it comes to actually tackling climate change, when it comes to stopping new drilling, when it comes to the homelessness crisis and housing crisis in this state. He's not a good Democrat. We deserve a better governor. That being said, I do not have any doubts that this is an effort being led by Republicans.
Sure.
Who don't like the lockdowns, who wanted a Ron DeSantis in this moment and they didn't get one. And you can see the breakdown of where the votes are coming in from. A lot of those who are voting to recall him are coming out from, more rural areas, way Southern California, Orange County, et cetera. I'm just assuming Orange County.
Yeah, there's probably a pretty good chance.
I think that's, Huntington Beach on lock, just on lock. But just broadly, so only a pretty big amount of Californians, 58.3%, say they want someone other than Newsom to lead the state next year. But only 42% would vote against recalling him and 38% would vote to remove him. So only 38% of Californians would vote to remove him. It also, I don't know, John, this is a state of 40 million people. 1.5 million signatures triggers a recall.
Yeah.
Does that feel like a little low? Am I wrong?
I mean, it seems low, except when I think about trying to get them. That seems like it'd be a lot.
That seems hard.
But can I just throw out one thing that I thought was interesting? Because obviously this is a pretty rare thing. even triggering a recall election. In terms of actually recalling a governor, I learned, this is a bit of US history, only 2 have ever been removed from office in a recall election. One in North Dakota back in 1921. But interestingly, while it is rare, the other one was Governor Gray Davis in 2003 in California. That is how we got Arnold Schwarzenegger. So while it seems unlikely that Newsom will get recalled, if he does, at least we'll have Governor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or something. That could be fun. Governor Diesel sworn in today. I'd go for it.
We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't see. This is the problem. I don't see enough. There aren't enough Democrats, progressive Democrats, being like, for lack of a better term, like groomed for this position of governor. Like they're who are, I don't look at our state assembly. Who do you want to push
for? You want Governor Porter? I bet she could get some stuff done. How about that?
Oh,
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe if there was someone waiting in the wings that they thought had a very good chance, but it's a long shot in absolute terms. And if they don't think they have that person, especially a person who would be willing to go against Governor Newsom, which is obviously risky in terms of the way the Democratic Party looks upon primary challenges, it's tough. Like I don't begrudge him a lack of interest in being part of that potentially.
But now you said Governor Porter, and now you can't take it back. Now it's in my head, and I want that. Thank you.
I know. Anyway, we should probably take our second break, but we do have more news to come, including Cardi B. What's she up to? Who's she feuding with? We'll get into it after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there. In the Ethernet, sent us in a member comment saying, that's all the right wing says when they disagree with a bill that contains good policies. This is a partisan bill. Also, even if it's voted on in a partisan matter, this doesn't make the bill bad. Republican ignorance is exhausting. Yeah, I mean, in theory, all of you hating it makes it partisan because only one party's supporting it. That doesn't mean that there's anything fundamental to the bill that makes it so that it should be partisan. That sort of thing should always be evaluated based on what the people actually think. That shouldn't necessarily be what determines what policy happens, but you don't get to say that something isn't bipartisan if the voters support it on both sides, but the politicians won't. Okay, Eclectic Leprechaun says, Trump saying people should get vaccinated won't convince MAGA folks. They'll think he has to say it and doesn't mean it. I doubt anyone renounced their racism after Trump said he's the least racist person and did more for black people with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, that's possible. I've seen that sort of excuse making to not have to do something that Trump actually responsibly said. Okay, over on Twitch, Atomic Ann subscribed for 9 months. Says 9 months sub, does that mean I'll birth a dragon? Just in case, get some sheets. Ain't No Angel subscribed for 4 months. Thank you for that. Twitch Micro for 7 months and says, here's some more hashtag Bezos bucks. Thank you, we very much appreciate that. Down in the member comments, let's see. Stressed and Depressed Dragon says we need to add upper age restrictions for public office. I mean, I definitely don't agree with that, but it is a thing that should be considered in the same way that youth, I don't think should be, a bar to serving, but is a thing that someone could actually consider when choosing a leader, perhaps. Intelligence-based Caster Dragon, that's a name for you, said, I wonder if the shooter had been a person of color, if the police official would have said that they had a bad day.
Nope.
I'm guessing no. But I am only confident enough to wager every dollar I've ever made or will ever make on that. And all of your money too, if you'll give it to me, or even if you won't. If I can steal your money, I will bet it on the fact that they would never have said that about someone who was, one shade darker than cream. But anyway. Marty Hunt says in the super chat, donated second time to Nina and volunteering to call and text, let's get her elected. That would be exciting. Imagine that. Imagine the floor speeches. I can't wait. Okay, we've got time, I think, for maybe one more. Mickey C says, a really bad day for the cold-blooded terrorist murderer. Seems like it was a worse day for 8 people and their families. That should be obvious to everyone other than the people cops choose to represent themselves at incredibly important, watched across the nation press conferences, I guess. Anyway, we got a little bit more news for you, including a little bit of fun, so don't go anywhere. We got that in a minute. Welcome back to what remains of the second hour. Francesca, pick it away.
All right. Well, it's Cardi B versus Candace Owens. WAP versus DAP. Very, very DAP. Candace Owens went on Tucker Carlson's show after Cardi B's awesome Grammy performance to cry, big, cloudy crocodile tears. Take a look.
They call this great. They say this is fabulous, that this is the stuff that children should be aspiring towards. So at the same time, Tucker, that we have kids that are not learning hard academics anymore in school, right? Forget about mathematics and science. You can trust the science and trust Dr. Fauci, but you have these kids learning about critical race theory. They're learning that they should aspire to people like Cardi B. You see that fundamentally we are seeing the destruction of American values, American principles, and it's terrifying. I think parents should be terrified that this is the direction that our society is heading towards. And again, we are weakening America. That's really what we should be talking about. This is a weakening of American society. We are setting the stage, and it feels like we are looking at corrosion, like we are about to see the end of an empire. America cannot survive. It cannot be sustained under these sorts of values and principles.
Imagine a WAP could do that. So powerful.
Yeah.
Who knew?
So what? It took down an empire.
How did the American empire fall? No, too much WAP.
Yeah, got too close. Yeah, I dial it back a million notches there. Jesus. For once, the blank, confused stare of Tucker Carlson made sense. That's how I think I was looking at her as she was going off on that insane tangent. Look, so people who do political commentary, sometimes you will begin talking, you don't necessarily know exactly where it's going, but you develop the skills that you put something together. She doesn't really have that. Like the ridiculous aside to Dr. Fauci. So she said, forget math and science, listen to Dr. Fauci. So which is it? Is it that we're not stressing that you should learn math and science, or are we lauding a public figure who's exclusively here to provide public health and science information? She doesn't know exactly what she wants to say there, but she does know that apparently they are teaching people in school to become Cardi B when they grow up. I haven't been to school for a while, Francesca. I don't know if that's true.
No, yeah, apparently that's like all chemistry classes now. They just study the science of that choreography between Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B. And that's it. I mean, have you been to science class? It's nothing but twerking. It is
so many thongs.
It is popping the P word all the time. No, it's bizarre. And of course, Cardi B took to Twitter to shout out the ridiculousness, writing, "Yay, we made Fox News." WAP, WAP, WAP. And then WAP, WAP, WAP. Of course, the clout chaser that she is, Candace Owens tweeted back and said, "Just at me next time directly. You're a cancer cell to culture. Young black girls are having their minds poisoned by what you're trying to do to package and sell them as empowerment. I'm one of the few that has the courage to tell you the truth. You should thank me. Cardi, of course, fired back with basically, thank you for giving me all these extra streams, because there's definitely people who still don't know what WAP is and are having their minds blown after watching the video. But the craziest part of the back and forth of this Twitter feud was definitely when Candace says, if you think making your husband a sandwich is a sin, but popping your vagina into another woman's vagina in front of the world is power, you are a lost soul. Now, I would try to respond to that with something clever, but Cardi then did the work, and I want to talk about it. But she wrote, as a black woman, you should know better than that. You know damn well America made it a caricature of black women only being good in the kitchen and taking care of children, also known as the mammy.
Yeah, I will say that I think ironically, it does buttress her point that we need a little bit more teaching of science and math. Her anatomy understanding is a little bit off there with the vagina into the other vagina thing. There's some websites where you can learn a little bit about this. They're actually pretty entertaining, I would say. Consider looking into them. But the thing about it that bothers me a little bit more is not that you should be able to expect any consistency from them, but I would love for them to decide what their party is, because what they've been trying to convince you for quite a while now is they are the cool party that's for free expression, oddly enough. They're the ones that are against cancel culture. They're for edgy stuff, like comedians telling racist jokes or Dr. Seuss. Stop trying to stop people from practicing their art, they'd say. But as soon as the P gets W, suddenly, no, it needs to be canceled. You certainly can't show that to people. So wait, so you can regulate what adults can see on TV more so than what's presented to kids in school? That's an ironic twist of common sense there. But again, it's because they're not actually expressing a real value, a belief in the need for free expression or anything like that. It is all contingent. It's all about the specific speech. They're not for more expression and less government control and less criticism. They're for less of that stuff about what they like racist cartoons from old British books and stuff like that. It's very contingent.
And they are so jealous. Just the clout chasing jealousy, because they're so not cool and they're not funny. Racism isn't funny, and trying to tell women what they should or shouldn't do with their bodies isn't cool. And you basically parading around as an honorary white woman, even though you're black, and throwing the entire black community under the bus time and time again is not cool. It just, and so just the amount of jealousy that happens, it's very upsetting, and also more upsetting because the backlash to WAP is DAP, and I just don't think we should be getting that's feels like the problem with the right in general is them being sexually repressed.
It's a legitimate medical condition.
Making dry P words, just don't take up the mantle of dry. You know what I mean? Anything to prevent.
That is true. So in the same way that song is just too much for Candace Owens, you're too much for me. I can't take it. I want cancel culture for Francesca Fiorentini. Actually, can we get some cancel culture in here?
I'm definitely I think I'm canceled dragon from now on. I think I should be canceled dragon.
Okay. Do we want to quickly do our last story?
We could try. Yeah, let's squeeze this baby in.
Or so?
Let's do it. Well, the question still remains, do you like beer, Senator? Also, is Justice Brett Kavanaugh fit to be a justice on the Supreme Court? And according to one Democratic senator, no. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who sits on the Judiciary Committee, is raising alarms now about the process that the FBI went into for doing an actual background check on Brett Kavanaugh's past during his confirmation hearing. I think y'all remember it. Calling it, quote, politically constrained and perhaps fake. And asking the newly appointed Attorney General, ironically, Merrick Garland, whose seat Kavanaugh's was supposed to be asking him to investigate. So this is from Senator Whitehouse's letter to Merrick Garland saying, let's see, at least 2 law firms contacted the FBI with names of credible witnesses who had information pertaining to the investigations. One firm provided names of potential witnesses that had information to highly relevant to allegations of misconduct by Judge Kavanaugh. The other firm's letter recounted how counsel for a witness with whom agents had met provided the FBI with more than 20 additional witnesses likely to have relevant information, including this Max Stier guy who was a classmate of Kavanaugh's who had corroborating evidence, and the FBI refused to interview Mr. Stier. Obviously, this is, I think you all remember the deposition essentially with Christine Blasey Ford, not a deposition, but the interview with her as she testified that Kavanaugh had attempted to rape her when she was 15, and that there were other witnesses that wanted to come forward, including a woman named Julie Swetnick. I just want to go to this letter again. Basically, Senator Whitehouse says this was bizarre behavior on the part of the FBI, that they weren't going through the normal processes and channels, and that there was a tip line that was eventually set up. But this is the third graphic. The tip line appears to have operated more like a garbage chute, with everything that came down the chute consigned without review to the figurative dumpster. John?
Yeah. So look, it's funny because we were just talking about the recall attempt against Newsom. One of the issues in American politics is that once you get something, it's very difficult to take it away. Once you get elected, if we find out that there was improprieties or something like that, you're probably going to stay in. Once a law gets passed, it's difficult to get rid of it, that sort of thing. And once a justice gets on the bench, no matter what you find out, if you're even allowed to find out anything, it would be very difficult to conceive of that justice being taken off. And this is not something that we're just coming in and discovering. They understand this. This is why they rush through people like Amy Coney Barrett. This is why they tried to avoid having an actual investigation. They know that once they get them on there, they're good. And they're good for life. They're good for decades. And that is a massive problem.
Absolutely. And White House has been raising the alarms on this and on dark money groups. I urge everyone to watch a clip. We don't have time to play here, but during Amy Coney Barrett's hearing, he basically breaks down how dark money groups have had an agenda when it comes to courts in this country. And hey, turns out Kavanaugh had some debts that mysteriously disappeared when he was nominated to be Supreme Court Justice. But look, I think it's important to also go at the FBI dropped the ball here. I know everyone's like, Christopher Wray, he's doing a good job on white supremacy. Well, he did a bad job on Kavanaugh. And we knew that there were witnesses left on the table when that happened. I don't have to go back to how horrifying and triggering that was for anyone who's been a victim of sexual abuse or violence. But just the display that Kavanaugh gave was disgusting too.
Absolutely disgusting. And thankfully, at least that I think will tarnish his entire career, if not taking away any of the power of his vote for literally decades again. Anyway, that is all the time we have, but we are gonna have a post game. It's gonna be me and Francesca. Should be a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll see you there.
I like beer, still like beer.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, Crunch Berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries.
Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody. Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you gotta force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Brett Kavanaugh and I went to a UB40 concert. They were a popular reggae band of the 1980s.
I liked beer, still like beer.
I like beer. When they claim that like the Senate's the world's greatest deliberative body, just remember, Kavanaugh gave that testimony and then he got the job.
I liked beer, still like beer.
Like beer, still like it.
It's so painful that it's really like, I feel like that hearing traumatized me a little bit, and it's like painful to think about it again. That guy's still on the Supreme Court. Like,
yeah,
they're all like, you know, these two, like Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, they will both try and overturn Roe v. Wade. They will try and like overturn Obergefell versus the gay marriage one. Obergefell versus something. You know what I'm saying? Chat knows what I'm saying.
They will, and they have decades to do it potentially.
They have so long to do it.
Yeah.
We need to expand the courts. We need to do so much, John.
We do. We should do that. You know what we should do first though? Our next story.
Okay. Is this me? Oh, am I hosting?
Yes. Sorry. I should have made that clear. Yeah, you're in charge still.
Am I still in charge? Oh man, I'm doing a terrible job right now. Okay, here we go. I don't have an intro. Steven Crowder continues to be the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone, mostly the internet. And he had a very, very hot take on one of the provisions put in the stimulus COVID relief bill, which specifically helps out Black farmers, which have long been ignored and long been sidelined in our country's history. And of course, Crowder and company had this response to that piece of legislation.
I don't know where you find this many farmers of color. But they did, and 5.2 billion are being allocated exclusively for colored farmers. Farmers of color, roll the tape.
As long ago as 1965, the US Department of Agriculture discriminated against Black farmers, but little was done to address the problem.
100 years ago? Yeah, most happy about the new policy, these people. So yeah, I'm gonna buy a plow, man.
I'm gonna plant that corn.
Go get a John Deere. Barack Obama, mother, I'm the president of plowing that head. You.
I thought the last thing they would want to do is be farmers. Wasn't that a big problem for hundreds of years?
Yeah. Isn't that why Arsenio Hall called himself the urban man's Johnny Carson?
I think so.
Yeah.
So much racism to unpack there. Wow, John?
Yeah, I love their, they obviously don't think that this is a big, to give you an idea of how genuinely intellectually topic they are. The first guy says, how many farmers of color could there be? I haven't met one, so how could they possibly exist? And then when they actually go to Democracy Now! To talk about the fact that, for well more than a century, there's been a variety of government policies that have in fact been discriminatory in both their intent and their actual implementation. They recoil against it. 100 years. Why should I care if something's been going on for a century? So in terms of the substance, they have clearly no interest in any substance about literally anything, particularly this. But when it comes to the comedy though, you have to answer for this, Francesca, because you're a comedian and so are they. You're the same thing. What is wrong with you comedians and your quips and your jokes? Defend him.
No. F that guy forever and ever and ever and ever. It's not funny. Here's the thing, get up on stage and do that. You know what I mean? See if you'll get laughs besides other people's incredibly uncomfortable chuckling as a few people just leave your audience. The worst part about that to me is that everyone's piling on this incredibly ignorant point, right? It's like, oh, let's just keep going and we've created a whole studio in homage to our horrible racist comedy. That's what this is, but it's just freedom of speech, Yeah, and so okay, well, let's break it down. One, how many Black farmers could there be? Yeah. The clip you're playing shows that not that many left because of historic discrimination. So that's number one. Two, an open racist comment about slavery, basically. Hey, wasn't that the problem that they didn't actually want to farm? That's funny. Yeah, that's the thing with slavery. It was that they didn't want to farm, not that they were
that was the issue.
Working against their will and for free. In fact, remember the 40 acres and a mule promise? That was so that Black farmers could get started. That was quickly rescinded and was not made good on, and then unleashed a bunch of white terror in this country. I mean, look, it's history we should dig into. It's just amazing to me that just why pick this issue if you're not just trying to do a racist voice? If you're not trying to do a Black affectation and then make a bunch of racist jokes.
That's all it is.
Right, that's the only point.
I mean, it's very sad. It's a group of guys that just want to be around other racists so they can say the racist things that they think for whatever reason are funny and not get punched in the face, as Steven Crowder notably was by a union guy at a protest. You should watch that video, it's pretty entertaining. It's actually a funnier video than anything that was said in that video, by the way. And you can loop it, you can watch it a whole bunch of times. So they've created this little room where they all agree about everything. There wasn't a single person in that room that was like, hey, wait, what if there was discrimination? Or, hey, just because we don't know any black farmers or Asian farmers or Hispanic farmers or native farmers, maybe they still exist. There wasn't a single person that said any of that, because if there was a person in that room that had that sort of impulse, they would be shoved out of the room. They have self-selected a group of the exact same sort of morons. And you made an amazing point about that particular thing. Do that on a stage. Like, I'm not a stand-up, you are, you know what that's like. It's probably pretty difficult, right? And pretty scary. And he's found a way around it.
A white guy's not doing that joke.
No, exactly. No, he doesn't want to, and he doesn't need to, because he's found a way to just broadcast to the internet and get enough, disparate racists that will like that. He couldn't actually do it like a real comedian would, but he can be really racist on the internet, and that's easy enough. So all of it is cowardice. Their social group is cowardice. The way they're monetizing it is cowardice. They want to pretend that they're comedians, but they won't actually really try to do it because they both don't have the chops and they don't have the bravery to even try.
Okay. For the actual context, since that is important, let's talk about it. So black farmers in America have lost more than 12 million acres of farmland over the past century, mostly since the 1950s, as a result of what agricultural experts and advocates for black farmers say is a combination of systemic racism, biased government policy, and social and business practices that have denied African Americans equitable access to markets. Discrimination started with the Homestead Acts, that offered mainly white settlers deeply subsidized land that was not even theirs to begin with. But then since then, the US Department of Agricultural offices charged with distributing loans have frequently been found to deny black farmers access to credit and ignore or delay loan applications, right? So whether or not you have experience in farming, but you definitely know what it is to try and get a loan for anything, right? Hopefully maybe a house one day. We understand the discriminatory practices involved in that. Well, same thing when it comes to working land and having a farm. So,
and all that information is available if they were curious. Unfortunately, what you just read there is more reading than they've collectively done since college, which they probably got in as legacies. Yeah, so they're not interested in actually learning anything, let alone knowing anything, having government policy be based on an actual accurate understanding of history. They're not interested in any of that, which would be fine. Not everybody who comments on politics has to know things. Some people are just funny. But if you're clearly not capable of doing that, shouldn't you be able to bring something? Understanding, curiosity, empathy, something? But they don't. They found some other way.
This is the problem with, I think, a lot of podcasts, generally. And look, I think to each their own on a lot of podcasts, right? Like there are podcasts I don't listen to because it's a bunch of dudes and I really need a woman's voice somewhere in there. I mean, I don't watch shows sometimes because I'm like, too much men, also bad acting, or everyone's white and like, I want to see more diversity. Like you don't have to all like all things. I think that's number one. The problem with this kind of like behavior is like, look, if they're in the privacy of themselves in their own home, well, then that's their crappy racist friend group and they can say whatever they want. I'm serious about that. Like say whatever they want. I don't expect Steven Crowder to be a good person. The problem is when you make it public and expect to be congratulated or laughed at, right? Oh, you're so brave. You're so brave for making a joke that an 11-year-old would make, in a basement with his friend in the middle of playing video games, which is again, fine. I don't know. You can make a racist joke, I guess. I don't encourage it. But when you're 11, maybe you're learning and then you take some classes. You know what I'm saying? The problem is the podcast world creates this like fly on the wall type concept where it feels like you're just hanging out with you and your other racist bros. Yeah. Except it's not. It is supposed to be disseminated. It is supposed to sort of take, cues and give cues for how it's okay for a grown ass man to behave.
Yeah.
So
can you imagine what they say when they're not recording?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's only gonna get worse from here because, like, I don't even know what that program is, but it is clear that what it's offering is racism. And they had a competitive advantage for a while, but now relatively more mainstream Republican shows are doing more and more explicit racism. That advantage is disappearing. Like they're gonna have to do something crazy to get people to watch them. So that's gonna be fun. Enjoy that, right-wing racists. Anyway,
and once again, you're just being hacked. There's better comedy out there. You can be more clever than that. You could talk about this issue. Not if you're an actual racist and you're bad at comedy, but I'm just saying, like, there's such a BS language. Oh, you can't say anything anymore. No. You can't say anything because you don't know how to write and you don't know how to perform and you don't know a good angle on this joke. Like there's a lot of people who actually, are good writers. They're good performers. They make people laugh and they're not racist while doing it. Just be a more interesting person.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
There are hilarious stand-ups out there.
Yeah.
They found a way. Look into it. Anyway, just briefly, let's talk about this. LA and California have gone through some changes recently in that we dipped down into the red zone on COVID from purple, which is actually worse. And actually, LA specifically, I've been following the COVID numbers every day. And like 5 days ago, we were at like 900 cases. We're down yesterday to like 330, which is way low for LA County over what it was. And so as a result of that, they've started opening up things. So there's outdoor dining again. Gyms are allowed to open at reduced capacity. Movie theaters are actually opening. So what do you think about that? Are you going out there to any of this?
I have been on local trips, like about an hour or two away from LA, where there's less COVID, and I have eaten outside at outdoor dining. And there's something in your brain where you're like, I'm on a vacation, ergo there's less COVID. This is fine.
Yeah.
I hope nobody from TYT sees me. Although actually, someone from TYT someone who watches TYT who works in a kitchen in Ojai, California, recognized me, and he says hi. He says hi to everybody. By the way,
yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I recently had a notary, like halfway through meeting with them.
A notary public?
A notary public asked if I worked at TYT, and I was like, oh, this is a little bit awkward. You have a gigantic stack of all of the facts about me. But anyway, they were very nice. Oddly enough, didn't recognize me based on their name. They didn't know my name, and I had my mask, and they couldn't recognize me just off the voice. Isn't that weird?
That's what this guy told me.
He was a really nice person.
He was walking away. He was like, I didn't recognize your face, but I heard you're just little yappy, annoying.
You have a distinctive voice, I think.
I was making a joke.
Yeah, no, and your voice is basically the way you described it. But anyway, no, it's not.
What are you excited? Are you excited about? Yeah.
Well, so two things recently. So this isn't because of the reopening. I think that clothing stores have been open most of it, but I went to like I don't have a lot of pants that fit for reasons that I'm not gonna actually like think about because that would hurt. But they don't fit. And I have one that kind of did, but then I sort of ripped the knee a bit. And then because I'm a big idiot, every time I put my leg in, it rips more and more. And it is like so ripped. Like I had to change before going to the bank because I can't be seen in those pants anymore. And that's like the only one I could wear. So I went to Macy's to buy jeans. I go to fancy Macy's and I buy this exclusive brand of Levi's. And so I went and I got a pair and I wanted to try them on. And it turns out that fitting rooms aren't open. Like I went up to a guy and I was like, can you point me to the fitting rooms? And he said it's not open. So like I looked at the pants and I was like, well, then I can't buy these. So what do you just, so let's roll the dice on some jeans now. No, I can't buy clothes.
Two options. First of all, that's ridiculous. Second of all, you just put them on, right? It's a Macy's. There's like 5 people in there, and like a senior citizen shopping for like a Christmas gift, like 5-6 months ahead of time. Like that is so you just put them on.
gonna go to jail
Put
for
'em on.
an exposure. I want to because I really need. I'm gonna be wearing half shorts soon. So
Did
should
you
I
get
rip
them?
the other one? No, I didn't buy any. I have to try them on. I don't know. I know that.
Well, then you return
I've done
them,
bad
Juan.
things to my shit. That's a lot of work. I probably should have done that, but I don't know. Anyway, the thing that I did do though is I've mentioned that the closing down of the gym for a year has been difficult and it's had effects.
Yeah.
I would reference the story about my pants. So I did go check out the gym because they said they're doing all these checks and it's very low capacity, but I thought, they say that, but like 1 million people are gonna show up. That said, I showed up to it and there were only a couple of people.
Nice.
So I worked out. And I've actually worked out every morning this week, and it's been very few people. I've worn 2 masks. It feels very safe. But even with all of that, and the fact that they check people when they come in, and there's very little COVID in LA, at least according to the testing, it still feels, I don't know, kind of crazy.
Dirty.
What do you think?
Well,
Am I being irresponsible?
No, I just think
I'm
it's.
not near anyone. I'm nearer to people at Ralph's than I am at the gym.
What machines are you using? You lifting? Are you doing cardio?
Lifting stuff.
Okay.
I'm not doing cardio, not because of COVID, just because obviously I don't. Never have, never will. But yeah, just lifting some stuff.
I love how it's stuff.
Just
like,
things,
just like trying to lift the vending machine occasionally, lifting.
Seeing if anything fell out.
After a workout, have some beers.
You
after a
occasionally go in,
workout,
crank out
have some
booze.
beers.
Who drinks beer while working out? Not only are you gonna hurt yourself, but you'll be all bloated. Like that's not good.
No, not good at all.
Anyways,
but that
so
is
that's what I've been
interesting.
doing.
Double mask, yeah, double mask weightlifting I could see. Double mask cardio,
That'd be tough. Double mask cardio for you is like regular cardio for me. It's like unnecessarily out of breath and hot. Why is he wheezing so much? If I put on 2 masks to do cardio, it would just be like my face with like the stairs going boop, 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 boop.
A cartoon. I love how you said you like put on your pants and then like your knees made like you getting fat knees? Is that what's happening?
No, it's not that mine.
You gotta work out the knee.
No, it's that there's a little rip. And so you put in your foot and your foot catches on it and widens it a bit.
Oh yeah.
Now it's easier to catch on to and it's a vicious cycle. And so soon I will be wearing half jean shorts, half jeans.
Just wear them
which
cutoffs.
Somebody could pull off, but I don't think.
Are you a shorts guy?
I don't wear jean shorts. I do wear shorts though. I mean, I've been working, nobody's here. Like Bart is here. That's we're shorter than you're thinking. No, they're not. I don't know. They're regular. I'm very uncomfortable right now. What is going on?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just wondering.
Anyway,
Are you wearing
but
them
I am
right
glad
now?
that they're back. I am wearing shorts right now, actually, and I'm uncomfortable both from the shorts and this conversation. But what do you think about the movie theaters, though? Is there any movie that would get you back into a theater right now?
I don't know. So Raya is on Disney Plus. It's like a dragony, like Disney movie, fantasy movie, like princess movie actually, but like princess warrior movie. I'm doing a great job explaining it. Anyway, it's like
This is the elevator pitch.
Okay, princess, well, I warrior, and she's South Asian, so that's cool. Anyway, that's out, and it's like $30 on Disney Plus. I was like, I thought having Disney Plus was already the payment. But I'm like $30, dude. That is 2 movie tickets. I would like to just go see that in an actual theater. And I feel like in a theater I might feel safer, but it is a long time. Like 2.5 hours in a gym, you could probably do it more like an hour.
Yeah,
you know,
2.5 hours. I'll tell you
but
that.
2.5 hours in a movie or 2 hours in a movie that's a long time to get COVID.
I mean, it's possible that there's like 10 people in the theater. I might consider that. And I'm more okay with Disney charging extra. I've been telling them like they should have done this with like Black Widow. Like if they charged $30 a year ago, I would have done it.
Is that out yet?
No, but it is gonna be out. And when it's out, unless there's a big spike, I gotta see it, and I gotta see it in the theater. And when Bond comes out, I gotta see it. I think that like if you're wearing a mask and there's a good distance, it's a really big room. There's a lot of air in there. That seems safer than some things, but it's like I said, I check the COVID numbers literally every day, so I have a pretty good read on what the current state is. So
what about drive-in?
I'm trying to be responsible.
Drive-in.
Oh yeah, we did a drive-in once we went and saw Girls Trip late last year. So I love the drive-in situation. There's one up near at the Rose Bowl. It's a really good one, actually. Yeah.
Was it actually good though? I mean, you don't get like the darkness and you have to like turn on your car.
So you do have to turn on your car. I didn't find that to be a big problem. When we came in, they gave us like a 12-pack of like alcohol-free Heineken for some reason, which was nice. But it was in the middle of the day, and I thought, well, how the hell are you gonna do a drive-in in the middle of the day?
Right.
And so we get there, and there's a big screen, and I thought, okay, so they're gonna do a screen, but it's gonna be like super washed out. No, it was bright sunlight, and it was perfect, the image. Nice. I don't know how they did it. It was awesome, though. If you're in the LA area, look up that drive-in near the Rose Bowl. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
You gonna eat popcorn or no popcorn? Because like for me, I don't know.
Oh no, I mostly go to the theater for popcorn. I'm not even watching the movie. I would like to see Raya in the theaters though, but it's gonna be Black Widow. That's probably gonna bring me back.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we'll see what happens with LA and around the country. Hopefully more and more people getting vaccinated. But I want to thank you all for joining us, not only for the show, but for the post game. Francesca, we've been spending a lot of time together this week. And based on the past few minutes, I think we're probably good for the rest of the week. I think we should cut it here. And thank you for everything though.
All right, bye. Being a big old, I don't know what I can say on the post.
Being a Crowder. Anyway,
being a big old Crowder.
No, but thank you for filling in for Anna. You did an amazing job presenting the news. Thank you.
We're also, don't forget to watch the Happy Half Hour coming up right now, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Ehrlich.
Yeah, it's coming up in just a few minutes. Okay, well, everyone, enjoy that. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
You ever played quarters? After a workout, have some beers. I liked beer, still like beer.